As the leader of the Booner Path, I lead from the front.
All right, boys. Lock in.
It's our core foundation, man. Grit.
I'm fired up. I'm fired the up, boys.
It's bumping right now. It's got my juices pumping, boys.
Welcome to Crunch Time Sports with Jeff, Booner, Lukas. It's Monday, December 16th, and we got a show. Lions lose to the Buffalo Bills. Injuries are happening everywhere. You know, during the game, we were live, and we got to see Carlton Davis and Lee McNeil go out. Dan Campbell talked about it after the game, confirmed that those two are out for the season. Well, Carlton 6 games, but if you get to the NFC Championship game, there's a chance he could return. Lee McNeil out for the season. We just got an update today. David Montgomery, who got hurt during the game, they got testing done on him. He is also ruled out for the rest of the NFL season. So injuries, they just can't seem to stop. It seems like the injury bug is spreading for the Detroit Lions. It's they have the most players on IR by a landslide. It's actually historic. I've never seen anything like this in my time being a Lions fan, a NFL fan. I've never seen a team suffer as many injuries as the Detroit Lions this year. I have never seen it. This is insane. And not just injuries, but injuries to key players. Aiden Hutchinson, Lee McNeil. Now you got Dave Montgomery, Carlton Davis, and we're not even getting to other guys that contribute that are still starters like Anzalone. You don't have Rakestraw. You don't have Iffy. I could keep going. There's a ton more. Kyle Pecco, who they signed, who's pretty solid. Marcus Davenport. Mekhi Wingo, who actually would have been nice to see without a Lee McNeil. He's out for the year. Yeah. And, you know, I did the show earlier this morning, and I know people are panicking, and I get it. We're going to have some good conversations today. This is why I'm happy you guys are here, because I want this to be a place where Lions fans can kind of come to, comment in the chat what you think. Are people overreacting? Are people reacting just right? I'll say this. The weather is ass, okay? It's raining out. It's crappy. And on top of that, the injury luck is terrible. It's unfortunate. I've never seen anything like this as an NFL fan, not just a Detroit Lions fan. What I will say is my confidence level over the last couple of weeks, and we've done this show, after Aiden went down, it was still there. You know, I'm still sitting there going, okay, they don't have Aiden, but they have key guys that are still here. Their safety duo, your starting defensive tackles. They still have the dual-headed running back duo. They still have Josh Pascal. They traded for Zadarius. After last night, losing Carlton, losing Aleem, and losing David Montgomery, I'm in a tough spot here. Okay, my confidence level for the Detroit Lions going and winning it all is dead. It is dead. And I hate to say that. I really do. And I'm curious to see with Boone and Lukas where they're coming from. But for me, and I talked about this morning, trying to find it's an uphill battle for the Detroit Lions. Can they do it? Yes. You know, it's football. We've seen crazy things happen. We've seen Christian McCaffrey be the quarterback of the 49ers in a playoff game. We've seen wild things happen. But I think these injuries, there comes a point where it's too much. And I think I'm at that point now where it's no one's fault. You can't blame Dan. You can't blame Aaron Glenn. You can't blame Brad Holmes. But what you can look at is say, fuck you to the football gods, because they just took a shit on your football team and our football team. And that is where I'm at with it. It's, you know, it's terrible. I hate it. And, you know, we'll get into more of the storylines later, like with Jameer and what his role is going to be moving forward, who steps in, Aaron Glenn. Like, there is really not much more to it. There's, no one to point the finger at. It's just hey, this shit happens. Last year, the Lions haven't really suffered injuries last couple of years. And this year, they just can't seem to avoid it. So the injury bug has arrived, and my confidence level is significantly lower than it previously was, even after Hutch going down. So it stinks, guys. But that is where I'm at right now as a Lions fan. Am I still going to root for them? Yes. We're going to do our watch parties. It's going to be still fun. It's still going to be a good time. But, man, my confidence level took a deep dive. Like, it's not I don't want to say the Lions Super Bowl, there's barely a pulse left. It's to me, Lions are in a tough spot. It would be, and you tweeted this out, Booner, and I agree with it. If the Lions win the Super Bowl, it would be the greatest coaching job I have ever seen in my entire lifetime. That is where I'm at.
Yeah, I mean, I'll say this, boys. And as I've been positive over the last 2 seasons with the Detroit Lions. Yesterday or last year, obviously at the trade deadline, I saw so many Lions fans last year. And I'm honestly, am I shocked that there's a lot of people out there that are similar to what you're saying, Jeff, and saying that the Detroit Lions are dead? No. Like I'm not shocked at all seeing it, because I saw it last year when Dan Campbell and Brad Holmes didn't make a move at the trade deadline, and everyone's saying they're not going to win the NFC North. They're not going to win a playoff game. They're not going to do this. They didn't make a move. You could say they had Hutch. They had these guys. They have this guy. Out of nowhere last year, this coaching staff and Aaron Glenn, with one of the worst defenses in the NFL last year, they found a way to make a run to go to an NFC championship game and have a 17-point lead in an NFC championship game. So for me, like going in like to be less than 48 hours out of saying, hey, the Detroit Lions are the best team in the NFL, there's a chance that, hey, they went out and you were looking at a top 5 team of all time. Within the last 24 hours, guys, we did a pregame show, and said this could be one of the top 5 teams of all time, and up there with those New England Patriots teams that we've seen, all of that. Yes, there have been a lot of injuries on this team, fellas. And you know what? I'll lean towards here, fellas, and the people in the chat. If people want some positivity, listen, first of all, do I think the chances of the Super Bowl have gone down? Yes. If you know football and you know anything about the game of sports and just anything, you know that it's harder to go win a Super Bowl now with the cards you have been dealt. But guess what, fellas? Klotzy, Jeff, the chat, hey, you've still been dealt cards to go play football and win games. You're still a 12-2 football team. You still have a chance at the number 1 seed in the NFC. You still have a chance to win the division. It's going to be harder, yes. But just because you lose guys, the Lee McNeil, brutal. That is brutal. And we're going to get into all these things throughout the show, defensively, and how they're going to be able to fix this. Are they going to be able to? What does this look like? And losing a guy like David Montgomery, Carlton Davis, like, yeah, that's tough. Like, it is tough. But I'm going to tell you guys this, and this one thing here real quick. Because I have watched a lot of Detroit Lions football over the last 2 or 3 years. I went back and looked, and I found a million records that this Detroit Lions team, not only franchise records that they have broke, NFL records that they have broke. With guys on IR this year, guys, when Aiden Hutchinson went down, everyone thought the season was over. I mean, Klotz, you sat up here and said you're not winning a Super Bowl without Aiden Hutchinson. And what did they do after that? They won 8 straight games, and they looked great. And guess what, Jeff Iafrate? They went from a 15th ranked defense to the number 2 ranked defense in the NFL after everyone sat up here and told me that the Detroit Lions defense is dead. They're not going to win a Super Bowl. They're not going to have a chance without the star edge rusher. And they found a way to put a scheme together to go win football games, and went from 15th to 2 in the NFL in defense. So listen, the word dead, I'm out on that. There's no dead. You still have your core pieces there, guys, are still there. We talk about all the time. Hey, if these players go down, your season's over. Jared Goff, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Penei Sewell, Brian Branch, Aiden Hutchinson. But guess what? He went down, proven the next 8 games on an 8-game winning streak. That one didn't matter as much because they were able to come together and figure something out. You still have your core pieces. And guess what you have still too, fellas? You still have a hell of a coaching staff that's already taken terrible defenses, terrible players, and they've been able to build something off of it. So no, the season is not dead. The only thing that happened is, hey, guess what? Hey, little punch to the face, a little check of reality. You were the number 1 team in the NFL, and there was a gap in between, right? Guess what? Now you're all on the same playing field as the Green Bay Packers, the Los Angeles Rams, the Philadelphia Eagles, all of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. You're on the same playing field as them now. You no longer have a gap. That gap that we talked about for the last 11 weeks, boom, it's closed. Now you have to out-scheme. Now you have to out-coach. Now you have to outplay. Welcome to being one of those teams in the NFL now. You are no longer the number one team in the NFL because of the pieces that you just lost today or yesterday. So is it dead? No. When you have the coaching staff that you have, when you have some of the players that you have, this thing's never dead. Never dead. And this isn't me being a slappy. This is me being honest. This is me being like, hey, I've seen them go out there with Tyson Alualu, Cam Sutton, Kendall Vildor, in an NFC championship game and have a 17-point lead and almost go to a Super Bowl. AG can do it. Is it going to be a tough task? Man, hey, you have a mountain to climb. This season is far from dead, though. There's a reason. Hey, look at your phone right now. Everyone open up your phone, go into the sports book. Hey, there's a reason they're still number 2 in the sports book to win the Super Bowl right now. It's because of Dan Campbell and some of the players that they have on this football team. This season's far from dead. Far from dead. Don't like those words out of your mouth, Jeff Iafrate.
Hey, Boone, me and you can align here as far as I don't think it's far from dead, but I think it's definitely much more unlikely that they make the Super Bowl and or win it. But to your point, there's definitely a pulse. But what they're going to have to overcome, I don't think it falls on AG's shoulders. And I saw Dan Orlovsky speaking on it earlier. It simply relies on this offense. This offense has to be perfect. And the worst injury out of all of these, outside of, I think, Carlton Davis, but the one that just truly hurt was David Montgomery, because the defense, not like you could handle the injuries on the defensive side of the ball, but if that offense stayed intact, that run game stayed intact, I know they've been dipping, but they were bound to get back on track together. David Montgomery, Jahmyr Gibbs, they give you a chance in any game with that offensive line and Jared Goff. The David Montgomery injury, I think, is what not will be the hardest to overcome, but when you see the identity of this team, the part that will be missing after all these injuries, I think he's going to be the most notable. But Carlton Davis being gone, it's going to cause a ton of problems. You look at just in the divisional games that you got coming up. You got DJ Moore. You got Roma Dunze, Keenan Allen. Then you got the Vikings with Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison. Then even with the San Francisco 49ers, you got Juwan Jennings and Brandon Ayuk. And then in the divisional games, as far as in the playoffs, there's going to be a ton of stuff that you have to go up against. But right now, there's a pulse. There's a very, very light pulse, but there's definitely a chance for the Detroit Lions to make the Super Bowl. And once you're in there, even if they play the Buffalo Bills again, beating this Detroit Lions team is still going to be a task that no team wants to look on their schedule that week and be like, oh, we have the Detroit Lions, because we have seen time and time again, when you doubt the Detroit Lions, they somehow find a way to manage it. If you can find a way to get a top 2 seed in the NFC and you get in the playoffs, I feel very confident with some of these defensive pieces that you can get back there and you can find a way to make it happen. But we got to see this offense just be lights out from here on out.
Yeah, I think a lot more is going to fall on the offense's shoulders. And I think that's just the reality of it. Let's bring in Kory, and then we'll have a discussion with him. I'm curious where he's at with everything, the loss, and kind of the injuries piling up. And then we'll talk more about it after. But please welcome to the show, Detroit Lions beat writer for MLive.com, is always brought to you guys by BetUS, Mr. Kory Woods. Kory.
What up, though?
How you doing?
Man, I'm doing pretty good. I saw this weather change is kicking my butt. How you guys doing?
Oh, I'm fighting some adversity, Kory. I'm not going to lie to you. But let me ask you this though, Kory. Everything that's kind of transpired. You talked more about your thoughts on the loss, but really the major storylines, the injuries. What'd you think of the loss yesterday? And we'll just stick with 2 injuries. I'm sure the fellas got some more to kind of break down with you. The 2 injuries that occurred, or 3 injuries that occurred in the game itself here. David Montgomery, Carlton Davis, Aleem McNeil. What'd you think of the loss, and then what'd you think of that following after? Because it was almost like you took 2 L's. Well, 4 L's, really, if you think about it. But what do you think?
Well, first off, regarding the loss, I mean, it's you don't want to say there's such a thing as a good loss, but if there was a game to lose, then yesterday would have been the game for them to lose. You don't want to drop any games in the conference, especially no division games. So yesterday would have been the game to lose. I thought that, first off, a lot of people are going on the obvious low-hanging fruit about the onside kick call. I did not like it. I did not think that it was warranted, especially given that you're down 10 points with 12 minutes to go. But if people are thinking that is the reason that they lost that game, then they are sadly mistaken, because first off, as I said before on one of my reels, I believe I said on the show, the Lions have the number one highest scoring offense. The Bills are number two. You cannot go out and spot an MVP caliber athlete like Josh Allen, 14 points. Your offense got out the gate, did win a 3-and-out, and then you punt it again, boom, 14 points. Then when you have the Tyler Bass missed field goal, you don't capitalize there. Then you have the St. Brown fumble. Those are 4 empty possessions where you did not score. So, I mean, the offense, yeah, Jared Goff did his his darn thing, but you do not want to be in the game where Jared Goff has to drop back 60 times, regardless of how well he played. So I think that the offense, you knew it was going to be a shootout, but the offense getting out to a slow start is the reason they lost that game. And I mean, it's good they put up a fight. They fought to the very end. I mean, heck, if they would have got that onside, that very last onside kick, you're talking about maybe the Lions having a Hail Mary shot to still win that game somehow. But the loss was as expected, given how the Lions' first 2 drives started out.
Yeah, hey, Kory, I just want to ask you, obviously now knowing with all these injuries, everything going forward, what's your confidence level? We just talked about it for a little bit here to open the show. What's your confidence level on the Detroit Lions to kind of turn this thing around, AG, especially with the defense and those injuries, to turn things around and confidence level still going to win a Super Bowl and making the run that, Lions fans were hoping for this year?
Super Bowl may be a bit much right now just because we have seen how the Lions fared against Josh Allen. I'm just going to say right now, seeing that guy on TV had to be amazing, but I had another higher level, greater appreciation for his game seeing it in person because that guy is an MFing athlete, and their Lions fans should not be salty about what happened yesterday. But going against an Allen, a Mahomes, a Lamar Jackson, those would be some concerns. But as far as the NFC, as long as the Lions wrap up that number 1 seed and they have to come through Ford Field, I still like the Lions' chances of getting to the Super Bowl. Granted, the defense is not looking the greatest right now with as it's decimated. I mean, now you have 16 guys on the injured reserve list. You're going to get some of those guys back, but you're going to have a lot of starters out. And when you still look at this offense, yes, David Montgomery is going to be gone. That is a huge loss, but you still have Sonic out there. And I'm curious to see how Jahmyr Gibbs is going to look in an expanded role with more responsibility. This might be a different type of coming out party for him. So I still like their chances because they still have a very loaded offense that they can do a lot of different things. But it's just once they get to the Super Bowl, what can they do there to slow down those opposing quarterbacks with this patchwork defense?
Yeah, Kory, the injuries hurt. When you see David Montgomery go down, it's kind of easy to be like, okay, Jahmyr Gibbs, you're going to get more of the workload. We know we can depend on you. But when you look at Carlton Davis in that secondary, and I think another underlying injury that people aren't thinking about that much is Khalil Dorsey, because now that you have Carlton Davis being out, who's another guy that's going to be called up to play on the perimeter? Khalil Dorsey. So with Khalil Dorsey and Carlton Davis being out, how do you think they're going to patch that together in the secondary as far as a unit going forward, personnel-wise?
I'm going to be honest. Remains to be seen because if I can kind of be given the room to waffle on this a little bit, the Lions are still figuring this thing out. Dan Campbell even someone alluded to it. I just wrote an article about it right now. It's available right now on mlive.com. They're still trying to figure this thing out. I mean, you got Vildor, and I know that's a name that is not one that fans are really happy about, given just the struggles he's had and how he's associated with what happened in last year's NFC title game. But then you just also have to look at the fact that, hey, Regstraw is still out with a hamstring injury. They're waiting on him to come back. Still got to see what's going on with Melifonwu. Is he gonna, when he comes back, is he gonna be back in that safety, or are they gonna try to get him into some packages at the linebacker? That's something they're still trying to figure out. We're still trying to figure out what's going on with Emmanuel Mosley. This is a guy that they said that was trending towards coming back and being an asset several weeks ago, but then 3 straight games he's been, a scratch. So there are a lot of questions right now. I know they're talking about possibly, moving Brian Branch around once if he comes back, and then trying some different things with Amik Robertson. But this is going to be a week where you kind of figure out what you're going to do. And again, the Lions are still figuring it out, and if they're still figuring it out, then I have no clue which way they're going to go.
Yeah, Kory, I think it's a fair question given how the run defense kind of looked yesterday. It was rough. I mean, James Cook had his way, and you're looking at the top of the NFC. You're looking at the Philadelphia Eagles. The Lions got moved off the ball on both sides. I mean, the offensive line, you couldn't run the ball, and you got ran all over, which is something the Lions pride themselves on. What's your kind of, I shouldn't say like concern level, like they just forgot how to run the ball. But when you talk about a matchup with the Philadelphia Eagles who moved around the Steelers, what do you think of kind of matching up with the Eagles? And now with the injuries, what's your kind of confidence level that, they got a big win against the Steelers and the Lions lose a big game? What do you think about all this with the Eagles?
Don't even worry about the Eagles right now. Just worry about wrapping up this number one seed and winning these next couple of games. I mean, obviously, if the Lions win these next 3 games and they, able to get past that first game in the division around you would expect they would have some type of showdown with the Philadelphia Eagles. But I wouldn't even concern yourself with that just yet, because these next 3 games are so pivotal that if dropping one could just drastically change what they look like in these. And God forbid they drop 2, but if they drop one of these, it could drastically change this playoff picture. So for right now, I would just say focus for Lions fans. Just focus on what you on. Greg Harden, rest in peace. He had a thing saying control the controllables. Right now, just control who is in front of you. Focus on that and let the rest play us out. Don't even worry about the Eagles.
Yeah, Kory, hey, just with all like the injury situation still, I can't stop thinking about all these injuries, and I keep seeing on Twitter, and I know how Lions Twitter can get out of control a little bit with bringing different people in. Do you see them making another move here? Especially like I saw the Jerry Jacobs tweet. Obviously, there's a couple other free agents corners that are still out there, and then like everyone's just freaking out about the Clyde's Edwards-Helaire release today about getting him to come in as a backup for Jameer. Do you see them making any moves, or have you looked into any of that to see if there's an opportunity for them to kind of bring a free agent in?
Well, I would say anything is possible because right now they need bodies. So anything is possible. I mean, I think even before you get to go into somebody like a Clyde Edwards-Helaire, you're going to see what you have with guys like Vaki, Craig Reynolds. I mean, they still got Jamar Jefferson on the practice squad. So I think as far as when you look at running back, I think they're probably going to look in-house first. I mean, Edwards-Helaire, I mean, right now he's just a name in theory. He's just a name.
Sure.
He has, I mean, if he's able to do anything or if he was of any type of production, guess what? He would still be with the Chiefs. So I'm not, and then also too, just off of everything that he's going through personally, we don't even know if this guy's even going to play football again. So there's that. So right now, I think when you're looking at the running back, they're going to look in-house. But when you're talking about this defense, I mean, there's how many practice squads are they going to be able to poach? Who's left out there? I mean, there's a couple of, like you said, Jerry Jacobs is out there. He had a very cryptic tweet. I mean, I think that if they did turn to Jerry Jacobs, I don't think that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, this is a guy that's familiar with the team, the locker room, the expectations. So if they're able to bring him back into the fold, I don't think it's not replacing Carlton Davis, but you're getting a guy back in the locker room who has some familiarity with the standards and expectations. As far as getting somebody out there to plug in for Aleem, I mean, I really have no idea. I will say this though. I wish people would stop hitting me up talking about some Aaron Donald coming out of retirement because that is like I said on my Facebook, you have a better chance of seeing me eat an old English D fitted before Aaron Donald comes out of retirement, has his rights relinquished by the Rams, and he suits up for the Lions. That guy retired at 32 as a first ballot Hall of Famer with nothing left to prove. He's not coming out of retirement.
Hey, what about Sue though, Kory? What about Sue? He posted kind of a cryptic message out there, but no, I don't want anything to do with Sue. All due respect.
I don't think Sue. I think Sue would be one of those imagination, come home, kumbaya stories for Lions fans. But in reality, I don't see any type of reunion with the Lions and Sue. I think that, unlike Barry's exit or Calvin's exit, I'm just under the impression there's still some bad blood on the way that Sue left Detroit. I could very well be wrong in this. I could be reading into that situation 100% wrong, but I think there's about a snowball's chance, and that we see Sue suit up for the Lions ever again.
And
Yeah,
kind of just to go
no,
along,
real
we're looking.
bring back Isaiah Bugs. Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Definitely not that guy.
Yeah.
Keep Bugs away. Keep Bugs away. But kind of, we talk about the injuries. I think as Lions fans, we all can understand that they're going to be important. We don't really know what's going to be the next step, but next Sunday you got to play against the Chicago Bears in Chicago. What is your confidence level? We said with the Super Bowl, but what's your confidence level for Chicago as well as just winning the NFC North from here on out, because you got another matchup 2 weeks later with the Vikings?
I think that the Lions can pull this out. One thing that you can say about this current Dan Campbell era run that these guys are going on is that since that 5-game losing streak in the 2022 season, the Lions have not lost back-to-back games. So they do have that feather in their cap. I believe, and and I don't want to take 100% credit for this. Me and my cousin were talking about this, but when Matt Eberflus left the Chicago Bears, he took the defensive scheme with them. I mean, so the Lions are in good shape. I believe going into Soldier Field, things could get a little crazy depending on how the weather turns out. But I fully expect the Lions know that they have to go into Sunday's game and take care of business because again, a loss opens the door for some craziness to happen. So I think that they're going to go ahead and treat this like a business trip and go in there and handle business. This is now because of everything that transpired in the past 24 hours, and this is not me going on some type of reach. Sunday is the most important game of the season and if they win that one, then the next week, Monday Night Football, that would be the most important game. Each of these games is the most important game of the season for them moving forward.
Yeah, Kory, I talked about it this morning when I went live. And we were talking about it last night on kind of the watch party and the post-game show, but moving Brian Branch to nickel permanently for the rest of the year, I think it makes the most sense given they need their best playmakers at the line of scrimmage, given what's kind of been happening. What's kind of your take? I know Dan talked about maybe moving him around a little bit, but putting him at nickel, moving Amik to outside, and then if he gets back, slotting him at strong safety. What do you think about him moving to nickel?
I mean, I think it's a very smart move because Brian Branch he has experience there and he's your most versatile defensive back. So I believe that would be, like I said, Dan talked about that today. I believe that's just a smart way to go. He has a pulse in the situation, so I'm just going to go ahead and roll with that.
And do you think Kory is opposite side of the ball with the run game? Obviously, the last 2 games, it's looked like it's slowed down a ton, and obviously now Demont's out for the season. What do you think the reason is with this run game? Is it the offensive line? Is there just some guys beat up, or what could this be? Because it feels like that's been the number one thing for this offense to get going is, hey, get this run game established. In the last 2 weeks, even with Demont there, it feels like it's slowed down a ton. What do you think that is, and do you think they can turn this thing around, especially heading into the playoffs?
I think they could turn this thing around, and Dan Campbell talked about that today. He said that they need to go ahead and figure out reestablishing their run game. And I believe that David Montgomery could have been dealing with some things over the past couple of weeks, even before that injury. Who knows? But I believe that with getting Gibbs out there, you still have him healthy. I believe that they can go ahead and reestablish that. I'm curious to see how he will look as the main bell cow, taking the majority of these carries. So I think if anybody can go, if anybody can go ahead and get this figured out, it's Dan Campbell and Ben Johnson and that whole coaching staff. One thing about this team is that they have found a way to continue to make the proper adjustments when needed.
And when you kind of just look forward, Kory, we're kind of staying on the run game, but when you have David Montgomery out, naturally, yes, we talk about Jahmyr Gibbs, and I'm a big Jahmyr guy. He's gonna have a lot of opportunity, but they're naturally gonna have to rely on Jared Goff more. And when you look at Sam Laporta, he really kind of had his first coming out game. I know there was a lot of game flow where he had to check it down because it was open, but 7 catches for 100+ yards is the best performance we've seen out of Sam Laporta so far. Do you think now it's kind of like, hey, Sam Laporta, it's go time because we got to find these hidden yards, the yards after contact in the middle of the field where you saw a lot of the times during the season, they did screens to Monty and he'd kind of eat up that 7-yard gain, 8-yard gain. I feel like a lot of that's going to go to Laporta now. Do you think that Sam Laporta is going to be full go, ready to go the rest of the season?
Well, I think that the Lions are going to have to figure out different ways to open up this offense with the injury to David Montgomery for sure. But I also do want to push back a little bit on the fact that they have to rely on Jared Goff more because at the end of the day, we have not seen Jahmyr Gibbs be an every down back because he has not had to. They've just had the luxury of having Gibbs and David Montgomery, just that formidable 1-2 punch. But I believe that Jahmyr Gibbs is fully capable of being an every down back. As a matter of fact, but that article, if you want to search it on Google or whatnot, I had a conversation with Louis Riddick, a guy that was once rumored to be in contention for the Lions GM job, and he said that Jahmyr Gibbs is a future NFL MVP in the making. So I believe that again, this could be a coming out party for Jahmyr Gibbs. Not to say like, oh, Lions move on from David Montgomery or something crazy like that, but this could be one where with more touches, we're able to see just what this guy can do and him being actually used in that Alvin Kamara type style. And who knows how Alvin Kamara was used better than anybody? Dan Campbell.
Yeah.
Outside of Sean Payton, of course. But yeah.
Yeah, no, we get you. Good, hey, great stuff, Kory. We appreciate you, man. Coming on, dropping words of wisdom. You can check out Kory M Live, as always, doing a great job covering the Detroit Lions, and check him out on Twitter at X at Kory E Woods. Kory, hopefully next week we get to talk to you on Monday. All right?
Yeah, Kory, you killed it yesterday too. By the way, man, I was following. You killed it. Yesterday was a big day, and you dominated.
All right, thanks a lot, man. Appreciate you guys.
There you go, Kory Woods, M Live, doing his
man.
thing. Appreciate him as always, joining the fellas. And he
Legend.
Yeah, every Victory Monday. This is the first time we've had Kory on in a loss, but we'll have him on next week. It'll be a W.
He killed yesterday, dude. Like Kory, the beat writers, man. It's like when we were going through a loss, especially with all those injuries, man. It's a long day. Yeah. It's a busy day, even for us trying to get everything yesterday. Yeah, I mean, it's tough.
By the way, shout out Justin, man. Shout out Justin.
Let's go.
Justin, he says, tell us everything's going to be okay. Appreciate you for the $10, man. And speaking of that, Dan Campbell did speak about why everything's going to be okay. Let's play this clip of Dan Campbell speaking to the kind of fans about why people should be chilling out. All right, let's hear from Dan.
I think for us, man, what do you want to do about it? And that's how I view it is this is not time to freak out and panic and start acting like things are worse than they are. We lost a game. We didn't play well. And you know what? Why don't we go back to work and clean up those things that we talked about that hurt us yesterday in that game? And we do that, then we're going to have a chance to win the next one.
All right, Dan Campbell telling everyone to chill out. And after the loss, and I will say, like, I'm gonna be honest, guys, I don't even care that they lost. I really don't. I don't even care about the loss. It's just the injuries are really, they're messing with me a lot. And I guess I'll let you guys kind of cook on this too, and I'll follow up. But Aaron Glenn, this defense, what kind of gives you guys? And I know especially the Booner Path, but what's the kind of confidence level moving forward here when we're talking big picture?
I'll say this too: the Booner Path. We will address the Booner Path a little bit later. My CPO, we had conversations today. The Booner Path, I don't know what time we're going to do a full are the Lions dead or not segment again. Booner Path will be addressed tonight. I promise you that. And my CPO over there.
Come on now.
I know we had a conversation today. We put together a plan for the Lions to still go compete for a Super Bowl and try and win this thing. Defensively, though, Jeff, and I'll say this with the injuries, this is something, and this is where I start to gain a little bit more confidence. And I know the injuries is tough. Like, it is brutal. Just the fact that they just keep adding up is where it's like, okay, like, at what point is the tipping for the Lions? And I don't think yesterday, like, you could say like that was a tipping point for the Lions all we want. I don't think it had anything to do with the injuries yesterday is brutal. I think it was more so yesterday, like if we're talking about defensively, like the biggest story defensively yesterday was not the injuries, guys. It was that you have gone up against elite quarterbacks for the last 2 or 3 years. The Lions can't stop an elite quarterback. Aaron Glenn and the defense, they have not figured out a way to stop a quarterback to Josh Allen's caliber. That's where it is. And yeah, if you had more players, obviously it's easier to do that. But like the scheme, everything that they had yesterday ready to go, they could not stop that, man. And that's the worry for me when it comes to the Super Bowl. Like Kory said, it's like, hey, when you do fall, like you end up playing an elite quarterback like Josh Allen or Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl, All right, that's shown to be a problem. Because I think like over a stretch, like let's just look at like a big stretch of football. Guys, the Lions have had guys go on IR, whether it's now whatever it is, up to 20 guys, 13 guys, 15 guys. Since what, week 4 or 5, this team has been dealing with injuries. They've been dealing with guys on IR. Obviously, losing your top corner, brutal. Carlton has been out, and you've won games without him. You have found ways to patch it up. Aleem has been out. Last year when Aleem McNeil was out, guys, guess what? You still only gave up 70 rushing yards a game. You found ways to plan, scheme, adjust, everything you need to do to just stay in the game. And this Lions team, when they stay in a game, they're elite at winning the game, whether they have 4th strings in, 5th strings in, 6th strings in. So, like, for me, it's the injuries are brutal. But we have seen this team, guys, like AG, we have seen this man patch up everything. It's going to be different. Like, I was listening to Mark Schlereth today talk about Detroit Lions defense. And the biggest thing that he said, it's like, hey, guess what? Aaron Glenn has to change everything up. His game plan going into the season, all this man that he wants to play, all these different schemes that he has, guess what? Time to rip all of that up, throw it in the garbage. Guess what? Time to go into zone. Time to give up, just like last year. Remember that halfway point when they were 25th in the NFL or 28th in the NFL? No, not even then. It was like 32nd in the NFL and yards given up. 32nd in the NFL, like 31st. They were dead last. And then AG said, hey, this paper here, boys, hold on. He said, hey, he had a playbook. He said, hey, throw it away. Don't need it. And he said, hey, we're going to give yards up, but when we get to the red zone, we're not breaking. And guess what? I know as much as we all hated it, you have to do that for another year in a row. And you have to do that. You had a 17-point lead in the NFC Championship game doing that with Jerry Jacobs and with Kendall Vildor, Tyson Alualu. You had to figure out ways to patch it up and get it done. So that's what AG has to do. And is it going to be a challenge? Hell yeah, it is, dude. Like, it's going to be so brutal for the next 8 weeks defensively. Brutal. But AG has proven to patch things up over this last 13-week stretch and the second half of last year.
I mean, AG can patch as much as he wants, Boone, and we'll get into why the Lions still have a pulse, but I don't think AG can do anything at this point. I mean, even when they did have Carlton, Aleem, all those guys in the game, so they were still getting cooked. Like, they were getting cooked by that offense. It goes down to, it's just been a personnel issue, and I think as the weeks go on, injuries make it worse, but there's now a point in the game where, not going to be the rest of the regular season, but in the playoffs, you have Josh Allen in the open field against Josh Pascal. That's not a matchup you're going to win. You have Josh Allen on a matchup one-on-one in the open field with Ezekiel Turner. You're not going to win that one. Ty Johnson, third-string running back Ty Johnson, running a route with David Long in coverage. You're not going to win that. AG at this point, outside of Brian Branch and Kirby Joseph, those are only, Jack Campbell as well, those are only playmakers that you truly have. Zadarius Smith is nice, but I think now we're going to start seeing Zadarius Smith get double-teamed coming off the edge, at least chipping him. Zadarius Smith, he needed Aleem McNeil. He can still go out there and make plays, but he's getting like a damn near a sack a game. That's going to dip. This run defense is going to take a hit because now teams know that, hey, we can just keep running, just keep that offense on the sideline. We're going to get what we want because when you saw James Cook get the handoff a lot of times, it was going for decent yardage. And where were they running to? Directly at the edge. Josh Allen, 2 carries, 68 yards. The Lions defense, there's a blueprint on how to blow them up now, and that's even without injury. So AG's not going to be able to stop a thing, and you can't fault the man for it. So he's going to try to put things together. It's going to be interesting to see because I still think this defense is going to be playing with confidence because they have nothing to lose. Like, they know going into the matchup, like, everybody is going to say this is probably one of the worst defenses in the NFL because on paper, you can't deny it. It might look like they're a top half defense because of the standing so far, statistics, but right now this is a top or a bottom 5 defense in the NFL. I could look at some other rosters right now, but the Lions are towards the bottom personnel-wise. So they're going to just know that they have nothing to lose. AG is going to send everything he has to try to create plays. So it's probably going to be an exciting defense to watch, but they are going to be giving up a lot of points. They were giving up yards and not points, but now we're going to start seeing those points being scored. So again, it goes right back to the offense.
I think when you talk about matching up with elite quarterbacks or really good quarterbacks, what you need, truthfully, on defense, because, again, is it going to be hard to – you're not going to be able to obviously stop Josh Allen, but you need playmakers. You need guys to be able to make plays on defense. And obviously it's better to have guys that make plays closer to the line of scrimmage. You have 2 safeties that can. And obviously that's why the whole thing with me is move Brian to nickel so he's able to do that. But when I went back, and this is what I'm struggling with, I'm just being honest. Like when I look back at defenses, like the worst defenses to win a Super Bowl, the commonality that I found with defenses is typically they'll give up a ton of yards, like to your point, Booner. But the thing that's consistent with all the teams, like the 2011 Giants, I think the 2007 Giants, I believe the Saints were in there. Was that 2009, I believe? And then like the 2003 Colts, I think. I could be a year off. But all those teams had like guys that got you production on the defensive line. That's why, Za'Darius, I think Za'Darius is a good player. But for some reason, he only played like 40% of the snaps yesterday. And I think at this point in time for Za'Darius's career, it's hard to ask him to turn back the clock and be that guy consistently. That's the only thing I worry about is on the defensive line with Noah Leem, and you're probably going to have Pat O'Connor now, him and DJ and Josh Paschal, who's been, not really what he was before the injury. Hopefully he can get back to that. And Za'Darius as well. These guys just had playmakers on the D-line. And that's where I look at like stopping any good quarterback, like let alone elite. You got to be able to get to them, especially the mobile ones. And that's why I love what Kory said. He's like, we should stop focusing on the Super Bowl. Let's just look at freaking the Eagles, for example. Let's just look at the team to get there, or whoever in the NFC you want to look at. Like, can you stop hopefully it's a home game, but at one loss, you're the 5th seed, but whatever it is, a home game against the Rams or a away game against the Eagles, whatever it is. Can you disrupt plays at the line of scrimmage? And oh, by the way, you can't play like that. You did on your run defense can't play like that. Because Saquon Barkley, let James Cook get you for 100 yards. Saquon will have 200 all scrimmage. So that's where I'm at with it is like, I get it. The only thing I'm looking at is, man, who's going to show up and really turn it up on this defensive line? And right now it's looking thin. They don't even have, like, I talked about Mekhi Wingo earlier. I would love to see Mekhi Wingo in this situation. He would step right in. You get to see what you got in him. You don't even have him. And their front seven isn't even healthy. I know they might get Derek and Anzalone back. But their front seven, the guys closest to the ball, it's thin. And that's why, like, it's going to be good when you get Anzo back, obviously.
I think, too, like, and I'm just trying to think, like, obviously, like, what we saw yesterday, and I keep going back to the point, like, the injuries, brutal. But I just get, like, my main takeaway from yesterday, we could talk about the injuries all we want. It's, like, just not being able to stop the elite quarterback. You look at last year, guys, and one thing, and I remember I went at AG a little bit about halfway through the year last year, and it was because you were giving up so many yards and so many points, and just like you couldn't figure out pressure. Jeff, your point, like defensive line, like you had Hutch last year, like him and Aleem, like Aleem went out for 4 games and got put on IR last year, and like you had to find a way. You had guys like Romeo Quar, like one of the Quar brothers who are now retired. I mean, you had like guys that are 40 years old off the street on that line last year. And what did AG have to do, fellas? Like he had to find ways to generate pressure in different ways. Like he was sending everyone. He was doing everything he could, and that's where I go back to like, okay, you have to make. Defensively, and Klotz, you played defense in your career. Like you have to find a way to generate pressure at some point now, especially like if you start getting Anzo back, Derek Barnes, the commish hopefully comes back for the playoffs. Like you're starting to look at some of these guys that are going to potentially start coming back. Ryan put in the chat, Ife Melifonwu, move Brian Branch to nickel at some points. Like there are going to be, I don't think it's like a dead defense whatsoever. I just think it's all right. He's got to figure out a different scheme to generate pressure to get these guys and put them in positions to make plays. And like just like you saw last year, because I remember having similar conversations last year with this Lions defense, even though they did have Hutch, but similar situations where it was like, hey, they are getting no pressure. The teams are throwing for Nick Mullins for 500 yards. They couldn't figure anything out. And then once they start going on this playoff run, and they said, hey, we're going to figure out ways to get guys to the quarterback. And they started doing that, and teams started scoring less. Even if they were giving up yards, they found ways just to get a stop here, a stop there, a stop here, a stop there. With the offense you have on this football team, that's what you need. Like you don't need a top 5 defense to go win a Super Bowl. You don't. You do not. That's a fact. Like you do not need a top 5 defense to win a Super Bowl. You need a defense that's going to give your offense extra possessions. Like I'm just going to throw it out here. Kansas City in 2022, and I know you have Patrick Mahomes, but this Lions offense right now is the number 1 in the NFL. They were 16th in the NFL in points per game given up. 16th. And they went on to win a Super Bowl. The Rams in 21, they were 15th in the NFL in the regular season in points per game given up. The last five of the last 6 Super Bowl winners, fellas, were outside of the top 5 in points per game allowed. So in the regular season, that is. So like it's you just have to put your offense in a position to get extra possessions and get stops because this offense is good enough to go out there. They're averaging 32 points per game. Like you have to lean on that. You have to rely on that. And it's going to be tougher. Like the offense, like Ben Johnson, guess what? Great job interview to go out there. Like he already is going to have a job, but like, hey, this is show who you are. Because like now he relies on that because of the defense.
And I'll add too, like again, like you are correct, Boone. You don't really need a top level defense to win a Super Bowl. But what does concern me is, like, for example, and this goes back to what I mentioned, the playmakers near the line of scrimmage. You mentioned the Kansas City Chiefs, which is a good example offensively. But the thing, and you brought up last year without Aleem, which is all fair points. But the thing that worries me is each of those examples have a staple, right? Like last year, and you already said it, so I'm not, but Hutch was there. The Kansas City Chiefs, Chris Jones was there. The Rams, Aaron Donald was there.
I do agree with that.
Like
that's
why to me is what's like now it's like Za'Darius compared to those.
So that's why, to my point, it's like with AG, hey, you have to find a different way to generate pressure. Like typically you're going to have a star player. Like that's what it is defensively. Even if you give points up, how can you generate that without that guy? And if you could find a way to do that, which again, they have done it. We have seen them do it without those star players. Listen, like if you could find a way to do that, you're going to sit there and you're still going to be in the mix for a Super Bowl and you're going to give your offense a chance. And I feel like at this point, guys, like with all these injuries, like that's all you can ask for, right? Like defensively, it's like you just have to give them a chance. Jeff, I texted you. I just said, hold them, I'm looking at the points per game, even in the playoffs. Like Kansas City in 19 gave up 23 points per game in the playoff run, that Super Bowl run they had. Like if you can hold these guys, like a team to 25 points per game in the playoff run, I know that's crazy, but like this Lions offense is one of the best of all time. I know you just lost D-Mop. You have so many weapons right now. You have one of the best OCs in the game. Like defensively, I feel like it's like you just have to keep your team. Like even you're going to give points up. We know it. It was like last year. Remember, like we're like you're going to give 500 yards up to Nick Mullins. We know that. How do you respond offensively to it? Like, are you giving them the red zone? But honestly,
and here's what, and Lucas, I feel free because I I was talking about this earlier and I wrote it down because I was curious, like where they stand the last two games defensively. I know it'll be different moving forward. AG will adjust. I get all that, but like points given up, they're last right now in the last two games, 48 and 31, 48 to the Bills, 31 to the Packers. That's 79 points in the last two games. That's going to be tough. Like AG's got it, and I get it, and that's where I'm struggling with is like it's like on AG to make adjustments. But part of me is like, is that even fair to like expect him to just like turn it, like just flip a magic wand and be like, all right, guys, like let's be a top 20, top 15 defense or something? Like,
do you think the Bills are a Super Bowl contender, Jeff?
I think anytime you have Josh Allen, you have that case. Yeah.
So the last two games they've given up 85 points.
What do they got?
I know they have Josh Allen, but again, what is the line? What
I brought up on the show, that defensive line.
I know, but again, even though they have the defensive line, listen, they gave up 42 points back-to-back weeks. I'm sorry, I got the wrong number wrong. It was 84 points, but they gave up 42 to the Rams last week and 42 to us still this week. So that's where, to me, the last 5 years, like defense, we could keep talking about defense. It's turning into an offensive league a little bit to where it's like if your defense could keep you in a certain spot and keep you level. But I know I get it. I just like still like, it goes both ways.
That's why it's tough. We have the conversation about personnel versus statistics. Like personnel, they're better than the Lions on defense. Like right now, but statistics, to your point, like the points are there. That's where I'm battling. Is like Gregory Rousseau, AJ Espinoza. Like these guys are like far better than anyone on the defensive line right now. Like that's where I'm battling.
They should be holding teams to under 30 then.
They're getting after. They held the Lions to like 30, 40 yards rushing. I mean and they got after Goff. Like they did some work yesterday. Those guys. So that's where I'm battling. It's personnel.
42 points though, man. I just think that. All right, I'll let you go, Klotz. I apologize.
No, I mean I don't really. You guys are like saying everything that needs to be said as far as like. Again, I'll keep reiterating it because I don't know how many times like you can't say it a different way. Like Aaron Glenn, like there's literally nothing he can do. There's nothing. The only thing you can hope is that Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, and Jack Campbell can somehow just hold it together until Anzalone gets back, till Kamish comes back off IR. Hopefully Derek Barnes as well. Just hold it down just long enough. In the red zone, that's the middle of the field. Your best 3 players right now are in the middle of the field. It might not be on the defensive line, but it's in the middle of the field with Brian Branch, Jack Campbell, Kirby Joseph. Just find a way to make it hell whenever teams try to throw over the middle of the field. They're going to be able to run the ball now. They're going to be able to throw the ball to the perimeter. Just don't let them eat up the clock in the middle of the field and try to make a play or two. Aaron Glenn, like you said earlier, Boone, he's going to he has to play more zone. That's where Kirby Joseph thrives. So if they just send the house and make quarterbacks uncomfortable, let the quarterbacks make plays, but force at least once, twice, 3, 4 times a game an opportunity for a turnover. If you just play soft and scared, they're going to get picked alive. But they just need to play the most aggressive defense they have up to this point in the last 4 years. Like, they need to respond after the Carolina game when Chuba Hubbard and Deontay Foreman, all those boys ran for 200-plus yards on the Detroit Lions. They need to respond how they did after that game for the rest of the season going out.
Mm-hmm. And you got to find ways to get your playmate. I mean, they got to force turnovers. Like, that's a big thing here for them.
We've seen them turn that thing around too. Like, we've seen it, and I think it's underestimated and getting overlooked a little bit that there are reinforcements coming. Like, I know, like, in this 24-hour stretch, it was like a dark cloud over the Detroit Lions fan base and media and everything. Behind that dark cloud, I mean, you have Alex Anzalone, who in the next couple of weeks potentially could be back for week 18. Ifeanyi Melifonwu's clock sets this week. Giannis Rakestraw, I know he's a rookie. That's a body. That's another body you're going to get. Emmanuel Mosley. Yeah, you haven't seen Emmanuel Mosley really yet. Like, there are still, like, reinforcements and even, like, defensive line wise, like the commish. We know, like, when the commish is playing well, we know what he could potentially bring. And then there's probably guys that I'm missing that we just haven't really heard about yet. I don't know if Cal Pecco, like, guys like that. I'm not sure, how the big those injuries, like Derek Barnes. That's your Sam linebacker who can get to the quarterback, who was getting to the quarterback before he went down, who could potentially come back for week 18 in the playoffs. Like, so I do think, like, if we're talking defensively, I'm sorry, but I'm just trying to think of the positives here. It is negative. I know we talked. I was like, there's a lot of negativity, and I think it's well deserved because there is, like, the injury bug is the biggest you've ever seen in the NFL. Like, dude, I just want to show you boys something real quick.
Yeah, because the one thing too is
crazy
like,
to me.
I had like a slight thought of it, but I was like, no, they're not. It's like they almost at this point, like, I feel like they have from the outside in, you would look at them like a Miami Dolphins team, where it's just like they're extremely limited on defense. They're not going to do anything. They can get the run game going, but can they do it consistently with Jahmyr Gibbs? They have a good offense, but defensively, you're just going to shred them. But then you just got to go back to this coaching staff where they have been in the past. I think this team really just went from that upper echelon with when it was the Lions and the Bills, and now they might be lower on the tier than some of these teams. But again, they're going to get guys back. They're going to figure out how they're going to patch it together. They're probably on like the Packers, Ravens, Vikings, that tier, Steelers tier. Like, I think if the Lions and Steelers were to match up, I think the Lions, because of their offense, would win that game. And I think that there's teams that the Steelers and the NFC would beat. Like, I think even with the Vikings, I think that'd be a track meet, and that we're going to see that week 18. But there's definitely this offense allows them to be in a situation to win every game. I don't think there's a game where you can just go, clearly the Detroit Lions are going to lose. I don't think that's the instance. Not yet, at least.
It's that what I opened the show off with. Like, there's that gap still. There was that gap. You had that gap to where it was like, and I tweeted it out today, if this Lions team, like, if you had half of these injuries and guys on IR right now, you probably have the number one defense in the NFL, and you're one of the greatest teams of all time. Like, if you have half of these injuries, because even going into Sunday before this Bills game, like, you're considered like number one team in the NFL, and there was a gap. It was like you, Gap, and then everyone else. Now it's just like, all right, you're on the same playing field as everyone else now. I know you lost the Bills game and you couldn't contain Josh Allen, but all right, you were right there in the game towards the end. Like, you're right, like, you're on the same level playing field as every team in the NFL now. There is no more gap. No more gap. Like, you're going to be in one possession games for some of these good teams now, and you're going to have to find a way to pull those off. Like, that's just what it is. Before, it was like, hey, you could blow out one of these teams. We're 4-point, 5-point favorites versus, the Packers, these teams. And hey, guess what? It might be a pick 'em going forward.
Yeah.
You want to show what do you got?
I pulled this up today, boys. Look at that.
You gotta zoom in on that, but that's hurting my eyes looking at.
Bro, it's just their injury report.
The season? Yeah.
This is like, dude, it is all red.
Yeah.
This is one of the most insane things I've ever seen. Like, look at like this top half.
Forgot Traquan Smith was even a thing for this team. Wow.
David Bada,
Nate Lynn, shout out.
Badgley got hurt to start. The commish all year. Davenport. I mean, Antoine Green. Remember, he had the head injury. I mean, they're
Look at
just
Monty too, just fully healthable, questionable, out for the year.
It's brutal, dude. Manuel Mosley, like he hasn't played all year, but he's like it's all red, man. And then that's like the Kyle Pecco injury. It's just
not
brutal.
Traquan Smith. Oh no.
Hey Boone, you know who's really gonna have to step up though? Your boy out of Saginaw, Trevor Nowatzki. Like when you're talking about applying pressure, like Trevor Nowatzki is now a guy that is a key defensive piece for this Detroit Lions defense. Like he's gonna be out there with a lot more run than he has before. But then again, it's like that's what you're going into the playoffs with. Like
I was just gonna say, you're saying that with a serious face.
Even with like, okay, Lions get the 1 or 2 seed. They play the Washington Commanders. Like asking Trevor Nowatzki to take down Jaden Daniels in the open field, you're still like.
Let's. Hey, this is where we forget again. Anzalone will be back. Derek Barnes potentially
I understand that, Boone, but you're still going to have guys like Trevor Nowatzki out there more than you'd like. That's just my point. Hey, Boone, you know, I'm not saying it's over. Hey, they'd beat the Commanders if they played. I'm just saying, example, on defensive worries, that's one of them. I think the Lions would probably honestly dog walk the Commanders even now, like next week. Like I still think
think there's a lot of teams. The only teams, honestly, and I'm just being honest with you guys, the only teams I'm really like is stressing me out. I just hate like the thing that it's just this quarterback thing, dude. That's really good. And like we could say the Eagles, I still think that them, and I know Jeff, I think you disagree with me. I know like the run game, like I still have faith that in the run game they're going to figure this thing out. Like again, I went back and looked when Aleem was out last year and that 4-game stretch. They still like, dude. Hold on. They held the Minnesota Vikings to 17 yards without Aleem McNeil. I just think this was a bad 2-game stretch where they've not even 2 games. Yesterday was the first 100-yard rusher of this season they've given up. And yet, so like we could be like, oh man, they gave up 100 yards but dude, it was their first 100-yard rusher they gave up on this season. That's more incredible than it is. Like, so like, I'm not going to, that's one of my last worries is Saquon. Like Saquon can rush for 100 yards. We're still going to find a way to win. I'm just more worried again about quarterbacks like Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, and Lamar Jackson. Like that's the problem. That's where like, I'm like, oh my gosh. Like what Josh Allen just did versus us. Like, I don't know how you're going to stop that.
That's like I would compare it to like that would be like a sleep paralysis nightmare where you're just like shook, you can't do anything about it. Like they're gonna make plays, but
I had nightmares last night about it.
But even like a regular nightmare, like Jalen Hurts, Jordan Love, Sam Darnold, Matthew
I'm not worried
Stafford.
about those guys as much.
You don't have to be worried about them. My point is, however they were probably going to play normally in that game, they're going to play a little bit better now, and then that's where it's just a little bit scary. As far as the run defense, I think Aaron Glenn is just going to have to go through, get whatever you want through the air. We are stopping the run. Just send the house. But again, there's just going to be times where Aaron Jones, Josh Jacobs, Saquon Barkley, Kyron Williams, they're going to make plays because the personnel isn't out there. Even like Aleem McNeil, like it sucks that he left, but that's probably one reason why they had their first 100-yard rusher last week. You have DJ Reader out there, so you have something to kind of build around. Darius is solid in the run game, Josh Pascal. So it's not like they have nothing against the run, kind of like how they are at cornerback right now. But they're definitely going to be giving up some plays, but just I don't think they're going to be.
I just think that one game was
what they have been.
Yeah, I think that one game was an outlier. Like Jeff, like we talked about last week with Josh Jacobs, we're like, hold him under 4 yards per carry and you're good. And what did he do? It was like 3.5 yards, and like that was the emphasis. So,
and they still scored 31. That's the thing. The pass, that's the thing. Like you're right, but and they still scored 31. So it's like I'm not even mad at that point about the run defense. I think it's just piling. Like it's hard to use prior examples when this is a unique situation. Like it's hard. Like how do you even compare to like the most players on IR and probably in my lifetime? I can't speak for all of NFL history, but in my lifetime, I don't even know what example to like.
At least to a contending team.
Yeah, I mean, they've had 13 plus guys on IR defensively for the last 8 weeks, and they just lost their first game. That's where it's like you can compare because you just had since Hutch injury, you've had 13 plus guys.
I get that. I think I think Carlton and Aleem are very good. That's why, like, I'm
Agreed.
not saying you don't, but I think their impact, like Carlton, your number one corner, I think that's a huge loss. I think Aleem kind of depend, like, me personally, when Hutch went out, the two guys I was like, at least they got in Brian. Let's say they're top 6 defensive players heading into the year. I'd go Hutch. You would throw Brian Branch. I would go. I would definitely put Aleem in Carlton in there. Maybe you get Kirby too. Maybe Jack's kind of in there. It's like I think there's like a top 6, 7. You lost half of those guys. They're out for the entire year. Like that to me is where it gets like it's hard because it's like they did. Like now you got Taron Arnold, which I do like. I like Taron Arnold, but he's got to grow up. He's got to be
quick,
very good, like for the rest of the year. And that's I guess the thing is, like you mentioned the run defense, which I do think schematically you might be able to adjust and be better in the run. I'm not saying they can't, but then it's like, okay, well, what do you do with that corner? It's like, okay, it's like now you're putting resources to getting after the quarterback, or you're blitzing, or you're doing something. Now you got guys in coverage like Vildor. All due respect,
I'll ask you this, Jeff. Dead serious too. I'll ask you this: Cam Sutton, Jerry Jacobs, and Kendall Vildor, or Amik Robertson, Terrion Arnold, Manuel Mosley, Ennis Rakestraw. Like I'm being dead. Like, and let's don't just say last year's, because like I think you can sit there and be like, okay, like probably the same.
On paper, if you're not taking, which it's tough because you have to take into account who's getting after the quarterback, because that matters. We always talk about it. Your secondary gets better the better you can rush the passer, and they don't have 2 guys that are key pieces now at all. So it's like I agree, the secondary is better on paper, but then it's like, okay, take away Hutch and Aleem. It's like, like it's like, well, now what do we got?
I don't even think it should be questioned. I don't think that's what you're saying, but last year's NFC Championship defense somehow, some ways better than the current Detroit Lions defense, at least to finish out the regular season. And we'll see how things shape up when playoff time comes and guys starting to get healthier. But at least for the time being, like for the point you just said, Jeff, like you could have Denzel Ward out there, Pat Surtain. This secondary is still going to get cut up because quarterbacks are going to have more time to make plays. It's not even the 3-step dropbacks that they're going to have success with, but the amount of times, like, I know I keep bringing it up, but like Caleb Williams, where can he kind of kill you when he gets outside the pocket and makes plays? Sam Darnold, we saw it. You've seen it with Brock Purdy.
Quarterbacks.
Yeah, just any guys that has the ability to make a play, they're going to be able to against this defense. That's why it's just you're hanging on for dear life till playoff time. Guys return.
AG likes to run press man coverage. That's what that's his ideology.
Got to switch.
Brad Holmes did a great job this year, like with building. Brad Holmes built the Super Bowl roster. This roster was constructed. That's why you can't even look at this roster was ready to go to a Super Bowl. Like that's how he built it when the season started. Now, like obviously having this conversation now, like AG's philosophy at the time, and that's why they brought in Carlton, Amik, drafted Taron Arnold, is because they want to play man coverage. And they can definitely adjust. But if you're not getting any pressure, it's impossible to stay in man coverage. What are you asking these guys to do? 7 seconds? Like it's tough for those guys. It's tough for AG. If he can do it, all kudos. I will give him praise on this show. If this defense flips and just turns into a pretty good unit, I will give him credit. But I think for me, I'll speak for myself. I think it's unfair to even expect that. Like, I think it's unfair to be like, all right, AG, cook something. And then like nothing happens. You're like, oh, I knew he wasn't good enough. Like,
you're not going to blame AG if they're bad. If the defense struggles for us,
I'm with you. I can't blame him. He didn't do nothing.
I don't know.
He's trying to work with what he's got. Like I said it on yesterday's post game. It's not even turning chicken shit into chicken soup. It's turning manure into fucking filet. That's what he's doing right now. Like it's like all due respect to the best safety duo. Still, they got the top safeties, but it's like, man, they need some of these guys to get back. I think you're gonna get reinforcement. That's why I think again. I don't think people are real. I mean, dude, I'm gonna stick
it's the last line you got.
I'm telling you, dude, like the Anzo reinforcement, the Derek Barnes, the Commish, like if you get those guys, I know that it's not Aleem and Carlton, but again, like you're getting something. Like it's better than what you have today at the end of the day. And like if currently right now we're sitting here saying, like Jeff, maybe not you, but if me and Klotz or we're sitting here saying the Lions can still go win a Super Bowl and they're on the same level as some of these teams in the NFC, and you're like, hey, you're still second in the odds in the Super Bowl. You're still probably favored to win the NFC right now. Like you're the NFC favorite still. Like, and if today you're like, all right, hey, in 4 weeks, you're going to add those guys. Yeah, you should be more confident. Like I wrote it down. the potential defense for the playoffs, guys. Like if you look at last year's defense to this year's, last year's starting defense, right? I'm going to name the guys who were in the rotation last year on defense that could be playing in the playoffs. Count how many there are. Alex Anzalone, Jack Campbell, Kirby, Iffy, Brian Branch, Josh Pascal, Levi O, the commish, Kendall Vildor, as much as we might not want to count him, Derek Barnes. That's 10 guys right there, guys, that were on last year's defense that had like critical snaps and who played. That's 10 guys. And I know there was probably, you could go up to 15. So you're missing the guy, you're missing, I don't know, from last year, Tyson Alualu, Aiden Hutchinson, a big one, Aleem McNeil. Those are 2 big ones. But when you do break it down, like you have those guys, okay, DJ Reader, step in, add that to the 10 guys list. Mohammed, instead of Romeo Okwara, guess who you have? Klotz, AQ Mohammed. You have Zadarius Smith. I know that's not an upgrade from Hutch, but you have Zadarius Smith on top of that 10 or 11 guys. You have Jamal Adams, as much as right now he's not making an impact. Jeff, maybe he will make one for you one day. Like, you guys see what I'm saying here? Like, I get it. I'm with you guys. This is brutal.
Of hope.
But do you see what I'm saying, guys? Like, you potentially going to the playoffs. If guys come back and are healthy and they're working back, like they're saying, hey, these guys are coming. You have 10 or 11 guys that played on last year's defensive playoff run that are still going to return and play for you this postseason. Mm-hmm. So, Klotz, to your point of being like, hey, I don't know if this defense is as good as last year's playoff defense. You're almost going to have the same one without Aiden Hutchinson and Aleem. But you're still filling in guys like Zadarius, DJ Reader, Terrion Arnold. Like, and I get it. You
had me, Boone, until I saw the hope.
That was the same. I said the same thing I just said a couple minutes ago. I said it was the same thing.
Okay, and I know Jeff agrees, and we're gonna split hairs through the process of this just because it's definitely a complex situation going on with the Detroit Lions. But when I just look at the injuries, it's your CB 1, your defensive end 1, and your defensive tackle 1, and at least heading into the season, your LB 1. Now Jack Campbell is, but your LB 2. So I think that's just why it hurts as far as you got guys there that have played. But outside of Brian Branch, Kirby Joseph, if you want to consider Jack Campbell one from last season, you can. You don't have any key players on that defense that truly made plays that are returning. DJ Reader can make plays. Darius Smith can make plays. But there's a lack of playmakers on that front 7.
Who made plays last year outside of Aiden Hutchinson? Aiden Hutchinson and Aleem that aren't returning this. Who made plays on the defense? I'm just asking you. Because like Kirby made plays last year. Brian Branch did.
That's who was
Ansel's going to be back.
Plays, though. Aiden
every play
making the plays. Like Aiden Hutchinson sets the tone. That's like not having Panesu on the offense. Like everything gets shaped.
He makes everyone better
already. But Aleem McNeil was making plays in the postseason. Guys are making like the key players that allow the other players. Like there's X's and O's. That's Aleem McNeil. That's Aiden Hutchinson. The Jimmies and Joes that are allowed to make plays offside of that. The Derek Barnes-esque type of players. Those are the guys that when they're not there, they're now the X's and the O's, and that defense just looks completely different. So the identity of this defense is gone. Doesn't mean that they can't play any defense, but the huge pillars of this defense right now are missing through all 3 levels.
No, I wouldn't say all 3 for the playoffs.
When you look at defensive line,
all three for the playoffs. I'm talking about here. I'm not talking about like today.
Okay.
Yeah,
this whole conversation is based off who you're going to end up having in the playoffs if guys get healthy.
Yeah.
Like you have your linebacking core outside of Rodrigo potentially back. Your safeties are good. Obviously the Carlton one you're out, but if you look at from Cam Sutton to those guys to what you're going to have this year going into the playoffs, which the Amik, hopefully Emmanuel, like you're going to be able to I think the biggest concern to Jeff's point all day and is going to be like, how does this defensive line and this pressure at work? Like, where does that come from?
Yeah, you're right. It's not all 3 levels. I think the way I was thinking about this earlier, the way I thought about it is like you're missing your key players at the 3, in my opinion. You guys might have different ones. The 3 most important positions on defense. That's how I would go. I think personally, defensive end, cornerback, defensive tackle to me are like top 3. If you want to throw in another, but that's why it's like they got to overcome here. That's the. It's going to be tough, but I do want to bring up some about the opportunity here. Jahmyr Gibbs, no Dave Montgomery, which stinks. Like short yardage, it stinks. They'll probably have Sione Vaki or Craig Reynolds in there. What do you guys make of kind of the opportunity Jahmyr Gibbs is going to get here? Because I think this is massive. Now I will put a little asterisk on it because let's be real here, Klotzy. Jahmyr Gibbs is a tremendous player. I'm not going to argue his talent. but they didn't draft him to take 20 carries a game. That's not what he is. And Dan even spoke about that. They're going to have to keep his, because you need him fresh for a playoff run. Like, you need him fresh. And that's why Dim and D-Mount were so good together, because they kept each other fresh. I think Jameer is going to go out there, hey, healthy offensive line. I don't have any questions about production, but I guess I want your guys' thoughts on kind of the opportunity he's going to get, and maybe who you think will step in for that D-Mount role, Craig or Vaki.
I mean, as far as Jahmyr Gibbs, what I expect from him, going up against the Bears defense right now, Aaron Jones shredding him. Then you got the Niners defense. We saw on Thursday night, Kyron Williams shredded them. Then you got the Minnesota Vikings. Who does Jahmyr Gibbs always just go off against? The Minnesota Vikings. So from here on out, yes, you don't have David Montgomery, but Jahmyr Gibbs is going to go the fuck off. I can promise you that. Hit the over every one of his times, and they're going to need him to. This is why you took him 12th overall, because you knew at some point he was going to be the RB1, whether it's David Montgomery, whether it's past David Montgomery. Jahmyr Gibbs was drafted for the 12th overall pick to be RB1 in this league, and even if it was Jahmyr Gibbs being out, they knew that David Montgomery, they repaid him to be RB1. But the matter of the fact is Jahmyr Gibbs, the more talented running back, the guy who's given more explosive plays. When you need big plays, he's one that give it to you. When you need to score quick, when your defense can't score points, Jahmyr Gibbs is a guy that can do it or set you up in a position to do it. So Jahmyr Gibbs throughout the rest of the regular season, you're going to see why he's a top 3 running back. The offense is going to run through him. The run is going to be set up through him. There's going to be a ton of screens. All the attention defensively is going to be on Jahmyr Gibbs. And I think that's why when I brought up Sam Laporta, he's going to start having more production. Jamison Williams, he'll have more production than he already has, because a lot of these touches that are going to David Montgomery, they're not going to go directly to Jahmyr Gibbs. They're going to go to pass attempts that are play action off Jahmyr Gibbs. So that he's going to open up the offense. We're going to see, I think, a little bit more faster paced offense, more than physical pace, especially with the offensive line, how they look. There's got to be guys banged up. Like Frank Ragnow the last 2 weeks, he has gotten worked by Devontae Wyatt, Kenny Clark last week, and then Ed Oliver had his second best career game, arguably, against him. And this is an all-pro type of guy. So they got to find a way to manage that. And then as far as D-Mont goes with replacing him, I would think that would have to be Craig Reynolds, just because if you look at the style between Vaki and Reynolds, Craig Reynolds obviously is more the D-Mont mold. I think we will see situations with Vaki out there to give Jahmyr a break when they want to run play action, when they want to do screenplays, things of that nature. But I just think it's going to be a Jahmyr Gibbs show the rest of the season, boys. Like, Amon-Ra is going to do his thing. All these guys are going to do their thing. But Jahmyr Gibbs, you're going to see why he's a top 3 running back in the NFL.
Yeah, I mean, I do agree. I think especially in the playoffs, when you're looking at like Jeff, to your point, maybe the next 3 weeks they find different ways. Like I don't think offensively they're going to struggle. Like, you guys remember last year? I was just looking at it, like the kind of 3 or 4 game stretch where the Lions kind of were without Jahmyr, and then there was games within the same stretch they were out D-Mont, and they had one or the other. But like Craig was filling in, they were trying to find different ways. Like I know the Panthers were bad last year. But like that Panthers game, Craig Reynolds, 7 carries, 52 yards, 7.4 yards per carry. So like he stepped up in that game. And that, I think that game was without, I believe that was without Jahmyr, maybe. I can't remember who was out. And then the Tampa Bay, like you played Tampa on the road last year. We know what Tampa was last year, guys. Like we know how good they were. You went on the road. I think without one of those top running backs, you won 20-6. Craig didn't have a great game. I think it was without D-Mont. Craig didn't have a great game, but guess what? Like offensively, like they knew, hey, D-Mont's out now. All right, Amon-Ra, like you have so many weapons. Like Sam Laporta, we need you to step up. Amon-Ra, you're gonna have to step up. I don't think like without this is where I think offensively having the depth and the weapons you have really comes into play. To where like, do you really take a step back from being the number 1 team or number 1 offensive team in the NFL? Like, dude, I really don't think so, because I think Ben Johnson is so good at what he does. His game plans, like we've seen game plans without David Montgomery all year. We've seen game plans without Jahmyr Gibbs throughout the year. We've seen them where it's like, hey, this is an Amon-Ra game. This is a J-Mo game. This is a Sam Laporta game. Like we've seen that. And then even like last year versus Vegas, Craig Reynolds, 14 carries, 74 yards, 5.3 yards per carry. So we've seen him step up, and we've seen them say, hey, this is your opportunity. And he's seized it in times. And there's been times where he didn't, but like, I think you can sit there and say, okay, if we need Craig, we can use him. We just have so many weapons still on this this offense. I don't know where you guys are at with this. D-Mont is a huge loss. You had that 200 monster, and I think the biggest thing with it was you knew that you were able. There was an opportunity to. And I said it since training camp, guys. I don't know if you remember when we were at training camp. D-Mont spoke and said, "Hey, one thing I did is I took care of my body. I slimmed down, got a little quicker, so I was able to be healthier longer." So they were able to kind of have that two-headed monster. I just think that you didn't always need the two-headed monster. It was good to have because whoever you needed to go to, you could. They both are that good. Like Jahmyr Gibbs is a top 5 running back in the NFL. You essentially have a guy at that level in your backfield. So it's like the 49ers being, hey, we got Christian McCaffrey back there. Eagles, hey, we have Saquon. The Ravens, hey, we have Derrick Henry. Like, I think you're saying, hey, Gibbs can be that type of level. He never had to do it because you had D-Mont. But when the playoffs hit, guys, whether you're playing in a wild card game or a divisional game, whenever the first week you play, guess what Jahmyr Gibbs is doing? He's getting 20-plus touches just like those 3 guys do. And we haven't seen that out of him yet. And the games we have seen him get 20-plus touches, guess what he does? The man gets 100 and something all-purpose yards, 150, 160. So it's going to be different. I don't think this offense takes a major step back without D-Mont, just based off of what they do have. My biggest concern, I'm going to be honest with you guys, offensive line. You need them. Like, I think you built from the trenches out. Your offense relies on you having the number 1 offensive line in the NFL. The run game the last 2 weeks has struggled. Jeff, to your point, you brought that up in the trenches. There's something going on with that offensive line right now. I don't know. And Dan mentioned it. It's just like one guy here and there making mistakes and missing their block or missing their assignment. And that's killing them. That's killing them the last 2 years.
I mean,
they just have to get back on track.
In some of these comments, Wild West, I think we know Gibbs can do it already. He's fine as long as he stays healthy. Steve Wilds, Vaki has a huge amount of potential.
Sure.
Tyler says once Craig just sees a hole and tries to fly through it. And I think with Craig, I'm not going to push back on anything you guys said. I mean, Jahmyr Gibbs is built for this type of stuff. I mean, you have a heavier workload. I'm curious how they kind of balance it. But I'm not – the thing that keeps me confident is they have the offensive line healthy. That's what keeps me like we've seen Craig Reynolds rush for 100 yards behind this offensive line. Like, we've seen crazier stuff happen. So I think D-Mont's a huge loss, but I'm not nowhere near as concerned on D-Mont's loss as I am the defense. I'm not even – it'd be like losing Anzo, but you still have like Hutch, Aleem. Like, I'd be like, Anzo stinks, but the guys in front, they're healthy. It's kind of like this. It's like, it stinks. Love D-Mont, but you still got the front 5 healthy. Like, I don't think this will, what's going to happen with the offense moving forward? Like, it's not that deep. I mean, the guy ran for, I know it was the Raiders, but still, he had a breakout game last year without D-Mont. So I'm not jumping up and down freaking out about D-Mont. Even though I love him. Love the guy.
There was a month stretch where Jahmyr Gibbs was averaging over 120 total yards, 7.6 yards per carry, and averaging a touchdown a game. And that's with David Montgomery. That's with all these pieces. So he's going to be on just an absolute roll, I think, here. Like, to your point, if Craig Reynolds can do it, Jahmyr Gibbs, especially fans are starting to see it more, but in between the tackles, lowering the shoulder, Jahmyr Gibbs is a complete running back. It's not like they got to put gimmick plays in to get him into open space. Like, I think because what you said, Booner, with the offensive line issues, they're going to have to find a way to get Jahmyr in space a little bit more than in between the tackles. But he's still a guy where he can just slide in between any gap, and then you blink and he's 20 yards down the field. He leads the NFL in big play runs. Like, I think offensively, it's still going to be very exciting to watch them run the ball.
Go ahead. Go ahead. Booner.
So go ahead. Sorry.
No. You say what you got to say because you good.
I was just gonna say, this offense, like, hey, if you go out there and average 32 points per game like you did the rest, like all year, you're still gonna have a chance. Like, you're right there, and that's where I think, like, the last 24 hours with Lions fans, it's been tough. Injury wise, it's tough. Defensively, listen, like, reinforcements are on their way. I know the 2 injuries you had yesterday defensively, those were like shaking up injuries. Like, whoa. But no matter what, like, again, there's only one other team, I think, in the NFL that can keep up with you offensively. You happened to play them yesterday. That's it. Like, I bet you guys, and I'm just being dead honest, if you played any other football team in the NFL yesterday, you win that game. You win it. It was, you just played. That's why I'm kind of shocked. People were a little like you.
Yeah, it
was known before the game. The number 1 and number 2 offense.
I really don't even care. They lost. Like, people freaking out. Like, I mean, if they had everyone healthy and they lost, it would be easier to digest. It's just like, damn. It's like you took multiple L's. You lost. It was just whatever. It stinks, but it is what it is. And then you get all the injuries following it. You want to give your Booner Path kind of update here? Speak to the people a little bit. I've been waiting all day for this. You and Klotzy, CPO.
Hey, the CPO. Hey, all right. So we talked today. And this is everyone in this. I want to know too. This is what I want from the people. All right. And Klotz, you too. I want you to participate.
All right.
I would like to know who's still on the Booner. Who still believes this Detroit Lions team can go win a Super Bowl? Because Jeff, and I'm not. This isn't me being like a. You said you felt like it was dead going into today. Like you were like, hey, this feels dead. Just drop in the chat. I don't know if you're not a member and you can't put the Booner Path. Hey, put in there. Hey, I'm still on the. I want to know. I want an update from the people.
Yes or no? Yes or no? Yes. Or no.
I'm on the Booner Path, or just hey, drop it in there. I am on the Booner Path. I want to see it because listen, it was the last 48 hours have been tough for Lions fans. Guys, you have 20 guys on the IR. I just showed you guys the 2024 Detroit Lions injury list. It is all red. What I keep going back to, fellas, and I've said this 100 times today, and I'll keep saying it for the next 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks until the Lions go win a Super Bowl. This Detroit Lions team has had 13 plus guys on the IR for the last 10 weeks. They've knocked off 8 straight wins since losing their top defensive player, their top player on their team. They went 8 straight wins. 8 straight, guys. They went all the way from 15th in the NFL in points per game to number 2 in that. There is a path still for this Lions team, guys. Listen, the Detroit Lions hold every single card that they were dealt cards, Jeff Iafrate. They control their whole destiny. I don't know anything about poker. All I know is the Lions are holding the great hand in their deck. They have a beautiful hand right now. And you go next week, you're a 7-point favorite versus the Chicago Bears. You go win that game, and it's 1 week at a time. What is Dan Campbell so good at, fellas? Hey, 1 week at a time. Let's put a plan together. Let's put a scheme together 1 week at a time. You win one game. You get to 13 next week. What do we do the next week, guys? We go to San Fran. If we're going to complain about injuries, guess what, San Fran? San Fran is in disarray. They are dead last in their division right now. Dead last. They're last. You go into San Fran, you're going to win that football game. And then, hey, guess what, fellas? As much as we hate to say it, all of the marbles fall into week 18 versus the Minnesota Vikings. And your season falls on the Booner Path, guys, falls on one game. This is where I'm at with it. Last year it was, hey, go get the 1 or 2 seed, get yourself an opportunity to get to the NFC Championship game. That's where the path dies. That's where we died.
Hey,
step one,
so,
Klotzy. Real quick, hold on. I'm just going to step
yeah.
one. Step one. The next 2 we do. You beat the Minnesota Vikings, win the division, and get the 1 seed. If the Detroit Lions do that, fellas, this is what I did last year. And guess what? It came true. I'm guaranteeing right now, if the Detroit Lions get a 1 seed, they will be playing in New Orleans this year. You have 2 games in the playoffs. You get Alex Anzalone back. You get Derek Barnes back. Guess what? Does Khalif Raymond come back, fellas?
Yeah, I'm not too sure.
Khalif. You get Derek Barnes back.
Patrick,
the Kamish back. You get a handful of defensive players back, fellas. If you have a 2-game season in the playoffs where both of those games are at home, let's say versus the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, you're winning that game at home. You're not losing to them a second time this year. And then what? You play the Eagles. Guess where you're playing the Eagles at, fellas?
Ford Field. And I promise you guys this, you will not lose a football game. I don't care who you have defensively. This offense will not lose a football game versus the Philadelphia Eagles in the NFC Championship game in Ford Field. I guarantee it. If you go get the 1 seed and beat the Minnesota Vikings in week 18, you will be playing in the Super Bowl in New Orleans. I want to turn this over, guys. That's a guarantee too. And you know what? Hey, Jeff, we can clip that. That can be our reel. If the Detroit Lions beat the Minnesota Vikings week 18 and secure the 1 seed, it is a guarantee they will be playing in New Orleans in the Super Bowl. I did it last year with the NFC Championship game. I guaranteed it. That was the whole premise of the Booner Path. This year, you get the 1 seed, you're playing in New Orleans. There's not a team in the NFC. I don't care what the defense, depleted or not. There is not a team that can stick with this offense. There is not one team in the NFL or in the NFC that can stick with this offense. And then when we get to the Super Bowl, we can have that conversation later. Klotz, hey,
Take it away. CPO.
Booner, and I didn't tell you this before, but when I was ready to hit the dead button on the Detroit Lions, Boone. I really was. I was going back and I was looking at examples and I found something, Boone. And may I read off to you that one seed, this is the path, this is the team has gotten to the Super Bowl before, and it is the 2016 Atlanta Falcons. Now, I understand lost the Super Bowl, but hang in with me here. When you look at what that Atlanta Falcons team had, they were the number 1 seed in the NFC. They had the number 1 ranked offense and the 27th ranked defense. They gave up the most points in the red zone, and they were 25th in yards. So the Detroit Lions defense, I think in the red zone, will manage to be not dead last, and they'll give up probably around the same. So right now, what did I say? The Detroit Lions have a bottom 5 defense. What do the Atlanta Falcons have? A bottom 5 defense. What was that team built on? The offense. When you look at what that offense was constructed of, MVP caliber quarterback in who? Matt Ryan. Who is Jared Goff relentlessly compared to? Matt Ryan. And who is playing at an MVP level right now? Jared Goff. He's not going to be the MVP level. Who is controlling these offenses? When you look at the developers, who did Atlanta have? A young offensive mastermind, Kyle Shanahan. Who did the Detroit Lions have right now? Ben Johnson. Offensively, weapons. What did the Atlanta Falcons have to throw to every time? An all-pro wide receiver, Julio Jones. Who do the Detroit Lions have? An all-pro wide receiver, Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you want to use the argument, well, yeah, that's Julio Jones. Look at the wide receiver, too. The wide receiver in 2 in Atlanta that year was Mohamed Sanu with 600 yards. I'm taking Jameson Williams every time of the week and twice on Sundays, as Jeff like to say, against Mohamed Sanu. Go to the tight ends. Austin Hooper, very fine tight end. I'm taking Sam Laporta. You look at even the offensive line. The only real true offensive lineman that they had, an all-pro center, and Alex Mack. What do the Detroit Lions have in the middle of their offensive line? An all-pro center and Frank Ragnow. Who do they also have? He wasn't a Pro Bowler. He wasn't an all-pro, but Jake Matthews, a very good left tackle. I give you Penei Sewell. You look at the running backs. They have Devontae Freeman. They have Tevin Coleman. Give me Gibbs over both of them. I understand that they both are very good, but Jahmyr Gibbs, I'm taking him single-handedly over both those guys. And if you look at their path to the playoffs, what they had to do, they had to win the NFC South with Drew Brees, Jimmy Graham, Sean Payton. So that was a good division. The Saints went 11-5. They had to clinch the number 1 seed, like the Detroit Lions are about to have to do, versus the New Orleans Saints in the last week of that season. The only thing that the Detroit Lions don't have that the Falcons did have, Vic Beasley had 15.5 sacks. So that's the one thing where it's going to be glaring to overcome. But when you look at what Darren Glenn can do, I think they're able to overcome that much when you have Kirby Joseph and Brian Branch in the secondary. And their path to the playoffs with the number 1 seed, because who did they beat? Because with the 27th ranked defense, how are you going to get to the Super Bowl? They played the Legion of Boom and Russell Wilson, Marshawn Lynch, a running team. And then the next week, you know who they played off? They played against MVP Aaron Rodgers in that Green Bay Packers offense, who also had a good defense. Oh! And you know what the scores of those games were? Against the Seahawks, the Falcons scored 36. The Seahawks scored 20. Against the Packers, the Falcons scored 44. The Packers scored 21. So it's not like the Seahawks and the Packers weren't scoring the ball. They still were. But that offense took it up a notch, and they played situational football. Obviously, they lose in the Super Bowl, the biggest comeback of all time with Tom Brady. The only quarterback that you can compare to Tom Brady right now is Patrick Mahomes, and I do not think he's going to make it to the Super Bowl. And what was the biggest thing that they did? Kyle Shanahan let off the gas. What did the Detroit Lions do in the NFC Championship last year? They let off the gas. And you look at that coaching staff, love Dan Quinn. Dan Campbell is a better head coach than Dan Quinn. So I think they have the head coaching advantage. I know you're comparing it to a team that lost the Super Bowl, but there is a team that is an eerily similar situation with the Atlanta Falcons and the Detroit Lions right now and how they're built. And the Atlanta Falcons managed to roll their way through the NFC into the playoffs against Tom Brady and blew the biggest point differential in Super Bowl history. And I don't think the Lions can do it. Or I don't think the Lions will do that. If there's anybody that can do it, Boone.
Hey, the Detroit Lions, huh?
Come on now. Hey,
let's get that dead word out of your vocabulary over there, and let's start getting some positivity in you.
There's a
I want you on the Booner Path. I want you.
It's again, football. It's tough to use the word dead, but it's barely got a pulse. That's where I'm at. It's like, I think the NFC. It's not a world beaters. I just think, man, the number 1 seed, the best point, honestly, is getting the number 1 seed.
You hold all those cards.
Well, it makes it's a better. less of an uphill battle. I will put it like that. Less of an uphill battle.
See, to my thing though, Jeff, you think like, hey, it's barely has a pulse. Listen, you have the same pulse with the offense that you have. And Jeff, you know what? This is where I get you a little bit here. What is one thing you tell me in football means the most in football games? Coaching. And I know it's like, hey, if you don't have the players, you can't coach. But when you're putting together schemes and you're like, hey, can this staff outcoach that staff? Who has been the best coaching staff in the NFL this year?
Lions are,
The
Lions
Detroit Lions. Like, as a whole, the Detroit Lions. And when you have the number one offense in the NFL over the last 5 or 6 years, hey, offenses have dominated. You've seen, like, I gave you those stats of, like, defense is giving up 23, 24 points per game in the playoffs and still going out there and winning a Super Bowl. So, like, for me, it's like, hey, if you have the best offense in the NFL and you have the best coaching staff currently in the NFL doing what they're doing, hey, give me head-to-head versus anyone in the NFC. The Green Bay Packers, Matt LaFleur is not out-coaching Dan Campbell. Won't happen. Tampa Bay, they might have outcoached you earlier, but guess what? It's not happening twice in 1 year. It will not happen. The Rams, we'll have that conversation a different time because I know Claude's doing that off-air conversations. Hey, I'm taking Dan Campbell and that coaching staff, and I'm taking the Lions in that game. So I think, to me, hey, you get the 1 seed. I'm guaranteeing you're going to the Super Bowl. Now, after that, we can have the conversation after that with the elite quarterbacks and all of that, because you might need to get those stops defensively. Like those we saw it yesterday. Like, that hurt you. But again, you cannot, like, to me, it's like there's a small pulse. No, hey, there's a pulse, and it's a beautiful pulse because you're in the NFC right now. You don't have to go through those quarterbacks to get to the Super Bowl. Jeff, you right now are the favorite still to win the NFC.
Those dirty birds did it. Your dirty birds did it.
Super Bowl odds
with the 27th ranked defense, and they had 2 rookie linebackers. They had burnt Robert Alford in the secondary.
They gave up 26 points per game. 26.
Hey, we're not saying it's a lock, Jeff. We're not saying it's a lock.
It's more live than you think.
I think,
so we're arguing essentially semantics. Like, is it a little?
No, this is not semantics.
This is
you're saying there's like barely a pulse. We're saying, no, hey, buddy,
you're saying there's a little more
pulse. All right.
Okay, but Jeff, let's look at it like this:
little pulse, little more pulse. It's like
let's look at it like
not
this,
a little more.
okay?
There's a good pulse.
Do you think the Tampa Bay Buccaneers are better than the Detroit Lions come playoff time when you get Anzo, all those guys back?
I think it's close. Yeah, the Bucs are.
Think it's close?
I would give the edge to the Lions. I would give the edge to the Lions. I would give the edge to the Lions.
Do you think that the Bucs have a pulse to win it, to get to the Super Bowl?
No.
Okay. Do you think the Packers do?
Yes.
Do you think the Vikings do?
I think maybe a run. It would have to be miraculous. Like
miraculous. Do you think that would have to be the same type of run that the Lions would have to go on? I'm just trying to see where the temperature.
I mean, I'll say this, and this is where we disagree. They aren't the best team in the NFC right now. I will.
I'm there with you. I'm not debating that. I think with the injuries, to my point with the Chiefs, why I would always knock them down is when you can keep winning games, whatever. But right now, if you were to play the Detroit Lions and Philadelphia Eagles next week, Eagles are going to win that game. We are lying. Boone, come playoff time, might be different when they're healthier. The Eagles would win that game. They're right now on a roll defensively, offensively. They're finding the rhythm. Doesn't mean come playoff time they will be, but because of the injuries, like the Eagles are pretty much healthy right now outside of Brandon Graham.
Yeah,
they'd win. So I
Packers.
Just
hate Jalen Hurts, dude.
I'm with you.
I don't think he's good enough to do anything. I don't think he'll never win a Super Bowl.
I don't want to see CD Deuce win. I don't want to see that man succeed in the NFL off the field. Who I could care less. But then like the Packers, I want to say yes, but that's just always like a close game. I will give them the slight edge for now, but come playoff time, I'm going to give it to the Lions. I'm going to give it to Lions come playoff time just because what have we seen over the last 8 matchups? The Lions just own the Packers. So I think the Lions are at least in that top 3 of the NFC come playoff time. That's a pulse. That's a pulse.
Dude, Jeff, I get what you're saying to a point, but like you do have to like take into account. Like you're saying, like there's this, like that pulse is barely there. We're semantic. Like no, okay, if they're not okay, who cares if they're not the number 1 team in the NFC? Like you could be a top 2, top 3 team in your conference and still be a Super Bowl contender. Again, plus 450 to win the Super Bowl. The Chiefs are plus 600. The Ravens are plus 850. The Packers are plus 1300. Like, this isn't like it's like a semantics thing. Like, this is a big difference. The Bills are like, you are literally, the Bills are plus 425. Guess what you are? You're plus 450. If that's not a pulse, I don't know what else is.
Hey, Boone, this is where, all due respect, you value a sports book more than I do.
Vegas knows.
It's not the
Vegas knows.
It's
and you know what? You want to know how I know Vegas knows? Because you lose a lot of bets. Vegas knows.
Well, you win a lot of bets. So do
exactly,
they know?
because I know Vegas knows, so I base my bets off them. You just
That's got to be the Booner Path 25. It's going to be the Booner Path, and on the back it says Vegas knows.
I just like I feel like I'm repeating myself, but Michael put it in the chat, and I do get what he's saying. And I know people are also agreeing with you guys. Michael put it well, and that's where I'm at, bro. We've never seen a team with no DN1, no linebacker one, no quarterback one, and no DT one before. Like,
guess what? Linebacker one comes back. All right, take that off the list.
Oh wait, Medanzo's LB1. All right. We can stay there.
Oh, I wasn't saying. Wait,
hey! If it's my narrative,
either way, you got both the linebackers back. You haven't
had
DN1. You haven't had DN1 since week 8.
I think Carlton, Aleem, and even Sprinkle and Demont. I think, to me, with how it's already going, and now it's like no more trade deadlines, so now you're kind of fishing guys off the street. I think to me that those 3 season-ending injuries. To me, it's like almost nail in the coffin. Like that's why I said,
hate this guy, man.
There's a pulse is still there. Anything can happen. I mean, like I said, Christian McCaffrey was a quarterback. I mean, he played quarterback. Like, Jalen Hurts could get hurt and you have Saquon throwing the ball. Like, anything can happen. I just don't. I'm not as high on it as you guys.
And that's fair. And I kind of talked to this with Jeff already, Boone, but I want to get your perspective because it's something that I'm not blaming Brad Holmes. But I think this situation right here should change his draft strategy because when you look at who was the 3rd, 4th round pick in this year's draft class, even the 3rd round pick in last year's draft class.
I see what you're saying.
Sione Vaki,
I know
Roderick
your point
Martin.
from the jump.
And it's not me. I'm not blaming Brad Holmes. It's more so a question to you. Is it time because now the Detroit Lions are clearly in that Super Bowl window? It can still be open. But when you're in the 3rd, 4th round, like, go get a guy that he doesn't have to be a star day one, but doesn't have to sit on the sideline and develop for 2 years, even before you can consider starting him. Like, you're not thinking about throwing Vaki out there like seriously for considerable snaps. You're not thinking about throwing Broderick out there seriously for considerable snaps. And Manu hasn't even thrown on a uniform this year. Like, a 6th round pick in Mahogany has thrown a jersey before. Like, I'm not saying you need a linebacker. It'd be like nice to have, but you see like the Steelers. They're getting Peyton Wilson in the 3rd round. He can play right now. He might not be the best linebacker, but he can contribute. Like, you look at that defensive end spot. Even Ennis Rakestraw is like a guy that needs to develop. You can get other guys that were there in the 2nd round. Kool-Aid McKinstry. You have to trade up for him, but you're trading up for Vaki. You're trading up for Broderick. What's your thought on that as far as draft strategy?
No, I think I'm kind of with you on that because I look at the Eagles defense and I know they drafted a lot of those defensive linemen like in the 1st round, but just seeing like, hey, like they do have their weapons now, and I think that like now that the Lions have their offense, I think looking at like the time like Brad has gone into the last year of being, hey, we got guys we can develop now because we have depth. I don't want to get too far into that a little bit, Klotz, because at the end of the day, again, you have like 15 plus guys on IR defensively. Mm-hmm. So there is a side to where it's like, we could be like, hey, your draft strategy, like not really though, because like you just have 15 guys. I don't know if you guys saw the tweets and stuff today. I think it might've been Nolan Bianchi or someone put it out there. The Lions basically you could put together a starting defense in the NFL with who's on your IR defensively. Like legit, like if you go positionally, like defensive, both 2 defensive ends, Marcus Davenport, Aiden Hutchinson, defensive tackle, Ali McNeil, and the commish, corners, Carlton Davis and Ennis Rakestraw, like safeties, like linebackers. Linebackers, like Enzo, Rodrigo, Derek Barnes.
Yeah,
that's a legit, and Hutch, like you have Hutch, like dude, you have a legit defense. So like I can't sit here and be like, yeah, I would love Brad Holmes to draft better depth and take a different approach and not do but he going into the offseason wasn't expecting to have 15 defensive guys on IR.
Yeah.
Like he was like looking at it towards like, dude, look how deep we are. we're going to be good going into the season. We can afford to draft some guys to develop them. That just turned really quick, though. Turned quick. So I'm with you a little bit because there are times where I'm like, man, I wish they would go after some just dogs. Like you see some dogs in the third, fourth round. I wish you would give me some of those guys, man.
Yeah.
So
that's what the team is built on.
I see a shout out Southwest. He says, "You ain't a real Lions fan. Shut the fuck up." and then Southwest,
who's he talking to?
Who do you think?
Oh, you okay?
Southwest says, "Win these next 3 games, and we can easily win 2 games to get to the Super Bowl."
Oh, hey, not easily or easily. Yeah, it's a guarantee. If you get the 1 seed, guarantee Super Bowl.
But here's my problem. And Southwest says offense got to win a couple shootouts to get to a Super Bowl. Why are we just casually sliding over? Like you just got to easily win a shootout. Like
they've done it before.
I know, but
no, I'm with you. And
this is where I'm at. And like we just disagree, and it's gonna be fun. We'll follow this all through the playoffs. Like. Am I going to hope they lose next? Like, guys, I'm still a Lions fan. I'm just being brutally, my honest opinion is I think it's much, 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 much more difficult to accomplish what we all hope they would accomplish early in the season. Or even the last couple of weeks. I think after Hutch went down, it got slightly lower. We talked about it. I was like, I'm still in it. I'm still with you. I'm still here. And it's like, all right, Carlton, Aleem, David. It's like, all right, fuck. Now we're in like a little low. I'm lower. Way lower than I was. And I don't know why, like, it's this crazy thing to be like, oh yeah, it's tough. Like even though if we disagree, like you're not a real Lions fan. It's like,
yeah, I think everyone can have a different opinion. I mean, if you want to have that,
just because I'm not as confident as you, like, honestly, yeah, it is what it is. Whatever. I love the comment though. Shut the fuck up. You're not a real Lions fan.
Jose said he is not on the Booner Path. So, like, Jose's with you, Jeff. Jose doesn't think the Lions will win or get to the Super Bowl.
And it's not like no one's going to be like actively rooting against them.
Yeah.
I'm not trying to like put that like, I want to be right. Like, it's not about that. I'm just looking at how the Lions shape up. I don't think that's a Super Bowl defense at all. That's not a Super Bowl defense.
It's not.
So that's what worries me. Like now I'm and this is where we disagree. You guys, I'm confident in the offense, of course. Like Ben, dude's a magician. They still have a lot of the guys healthy, but it's like, man, you're going to get into some games here where you may face off with the Eagles, and I don't think you can just walk in and be like, we're just going to drop 40 on them. Like sometimes you might get more of like a battle where it's like 27. Like I think that's just unrealistic to be like, yeah, they'll just score 40 against anyone they face. Like. There might be a game where you might need your defense to make a play. Houston, they needed the defense in the second half. They ain't going to get that type of performance. Like, they're not. I'm sorry. You're not going to hold your opponent not with what they got, man. Half the guys that are playing didn't have jobs weeks ago.
Hey, I'll tell you this. I want to make a bet with you, Jeff. Let's make what do we usually do? Pizza?
Yeah, let's make a pizza.
What's the number? What's the number? I want to know a number where I think that, like, let's say there is going to be a game where the Lions hold a team the rest of the season and playoffs under 24 points.
See, now we're talking.
But you're saying they have to win. You're saying your statement right there. No, I'm saying we're talking about the rest of the season. Your statement right there makes it sound like you're like they have to basically essentially. I've seen people on Twitter say this. They have to essentially score 40 points a game for the rest of the year to even have a shot. That's wrong. Like there are going to be games that you're like they will never do what they did versus the Texans again. Guys, there are going to be games defensively, even if you have, guys that are just filling in. When you get certain guys back too, to where it's like they are going to hold a team under 24, and this isn't a deadbeat team. This isn't a deadbeat staff. Like you're acting like this is the worst staff in the NFL. They're going to find a way.
At all,
They're going to find a way to hold a team. I bet you in the next whatever it is, 7 games they play, whatever through the playoffs, they will hold a team under 24. I'll guarantee that. And we can make a bet if you want.
No,
you don't think they will.
It's not even the discussion.
Now they don't have to score 40 every game to do it. Now it's different. That's where I'm a little like, come on.
No, so how about this? No, it's okay. My point was it's gonna be much more difficult. By the way, in that Houston game,
for sure,
Davis had 2 picks. He's gone.
Okay.
Like
they've played games where they've held teams like Come on, man.
So, okay. So, I mean, again, they play the Bears next weekend. The Bears look like shit. Like, obviously, there'll be games where the opponent's just trash. But when we're talking about top of the NFC or whatever, in the Super Bowl, whatever the example is, a good team, that's where it's like, okay, a lot of pressure is going to be on the offense. That's all. You can't.
I agree.
Really
That I can agree with.
You need your offense to be mistake-free. And if you haven't noticed, we've talked about it. Dan Campbell, what has he been doing over the last couple of games? Way more aggressive on offense. What does that tell you? He's not lost, but he's like, fuck, we ain't got it. 79 points allowed. They've been they didn't want to give Jordan the ball back at the end of the game, which is fair. I agree because
he would have done that with any game.
But you do that when you like that game was 34-31 in that type of game. You're not doing that. You know, like if it was, 13-10 or at the time 10-10, it's like, or whatever.
You were second in the NFL in points per game allowed going into yesterday. Second.
And now they've
second
over the last two games.
So Dan Campbell's been aggressive his whole career. He didn't just start getting more aggressive because the defense can't hold up. You're second in the NFL.
Okay. But what I'm saying is, like, when's the last time they went for a fake punt? This year. Do you remember? Because I don't. Oh, yeah, the Bills game with all the injuries.
Well, obviously, yesterday was such an outlier because the injuries happened, Jeff. Jeff, yesterday you did it. You couldn't give it. You were giving everything to Josh Allen. That was why they had the onside kick.
I know the defense.
You're taking a one-game sample size, Jeff Iafrate. We're talking about before yesterday. They were 17 points per game given up before yesterday. So I don't want to hear that. But you're taking a one-game sample size.
Yesterday. That's the point. It's different moving forward. It's different. It's going to be different.
Again, you keep making these statements like Dan Campbell has been more aggressive the last, 6 weeks or whatever it is.
I never said 6 weeks.
Whatever the stretch of football was, you said.
You're
like just yesterday. He was yesterday.
I said the Bills fake punt. Packers more aggressive. I mean, he's not wrong. They've allowed 79 points. You got to be aggressive. You cannot allow teams to score 79 in 2 games. Like, Dan's going to be aggressive, but, like, come on. The last 2 games, they've let everyone score. Everyone, their cousin, their sister, their brother, their uncle, their aunt, everyone's getting in the end zone. So, of course, he's going to be more fucking aggressive, as he should. Like, everyone's getting paid. Everyone's getting paid. James Cook's getting paid. Like, this is why that's why the point.
Ray Davis.
It's not that he's different. I don't want him.
I'll say like, yes, he has been more aggressive the last 2 weeks. I just
rightfully so.
Yes, but to me, it's like, hey, there's still stretches of football where you've seen him like this defense. All right, going into last week again, second in the NFL. Even after giving up 30-something to the Packers, you were second in the NFL in points per game given up. That's crazy. So it's like, yeah, like I just don't think the one or 2 game stretch, like, yes, there is something there and there are injuries. So you're like, hey, this is a concern moving forward. We also have stretch of football where you have given up. Let me just pull it up here.
We're going past again.
We're going past, but again, past you were without 13 guys on the IR.
Make it 20. Add 7 more.
You're talking defensively. You added 2 more. All right, I'm done with this conversation.
Well, 3.
Boys, we all just need to collectively.
You're acting like they're going to give up 40 points a game for every single game the rest of the year, and then when I try and make the bet with you, you won't do it.
No, the bet wasn't even what the bet is.
It's how many points will they give up in a game, and you won't take it because you think that there's a chance they can hold a team under 24.
Because they play the Bears, bro. Like,
all right, take the Bears out. Every other game besides the Bears, take the Bears out.
Like we're talking. You want to bet in an. Okay, whatever. You could
say like if with anything you do it like playoff time.
Yeah, all right, playoff time. Shake on it. We'll do it in the playoffs.
I'm talking top NFC teams. That's
playoffs.
My point. You're not gonna, like the Houston Texans. I think are a very good team. I know they look a little shaky, but they held that team scoreless in the second half. That's gonna be tough to do now. They haven't done it the last 2 games, and they face, I would say, Josh MVP, but Jordan Love, pretty good quarterback. Like they're gonna face good quarterbacks in the playoffs. So, like a 79 point allowed with 2 good quarterbacks, 1 MVP, like you ain't going to play Caleb Williams in the playoffs. You're going to play, better quarterbacks. Matthew, Baker, maybe less so, but you get my point.
Baker's cutting up.
He is. He's playing well, but you get my point though. Like, whatever. I really hope, guys. I hope I'm wrong, But I just don't see how that defense, with what they have, like, God bless Aaron Glenn. Honestly, that dude. If they win a Super Bowl and that defense turns into this like even solid unit, like good unit, give that man whatever job he wants. Fire the current head coach and make Aaron Glenn the head coach of that team. He could pick any franchise in the NFL. Go to any franchise. Roger Goodell just boot whoever's coaching and put Aaron Glenn where he wants. If he could turn this defense into like just top 15 in whatever category as a unit. It's just tough, man. Like the offense.
It's the end of the world, man.
No, I would say it's
getting close, but it's not there yet.
I don't mean that. That was towards Jeff.
Hey, I don't know. I don't know what he's talking about. But I will say I'm way less confident for sure. And that's where we just disagree. It's fine. This is what happens in an NFL season. Injuries are going to occur. It sucks.
Exactly.
You know, it's nothing. It's no one's fault.
Watson.
It's just how it happens. Like, thankfully, they still have Jared Goff, but like besides him, they've lost every other important player besides Brian Branch and Kirk.
Amon-Ra St. Brown
and Amon-Ra
Gibbs,
but they're all on offense. All go ahead.
Jack Campbell.
But the guys
DJ Reader
are higher. No,
Zadarius Smith. Oh, sorry. Yeah, they don't matter. Yeah. Okay.
I never said they don't matter. See,
you said all the guys
I know what you're doing. You're trying to go.
You said all the guys that matter. We've lost all.
No. I said the guys that are the most important. You got to listen. I said Aiden, DJ, Carlton. You think he's more important than Aiden or Aleem?
No, but right now, over the last 8 weeks, he has been.
You're arguing again. Like, what are we talking about? I mean, as a player, is he more important than Aiden Hutchinson?
No, because I'm just saying over the last 8 week stretch, since you've brought him in, he has been one of the most important players on your defense.
He's where you're at.
The best stretch of football that he's played in his career. He has played here.
You're going to need him to play. You're going to need him to turn the clock back to 26-year-old Zadarius Smith.
I mean, again, the best stretch of his football he's played was during that stretch.
The best stretch in his entire career. He's played in Detroit.
That 4 or 5 game stretch, dude, where he had 4 sacks in like 4 games or whatever it was.
Best stretch in his entire career.
We should go look at pressures and everything. We should pull that up.
So now you're going to die on the Zadarius Smith.
I'm not dying on the hill. We're just talking.
Just trolling at this point. Like, you're not even, that's not even true. He's not more important than Aiden, Aleem, Carlton.
I'm not saying that. See, this is where
we agree. Why are you like, what are you even saying? You're like, so he doesn't matter? Zadarius Smith.
You need to, all right, relax now. Come on.
He doesn't matter at all. That's the takeaway.
Hey,
disingenuous.
On the bright side, fellas. On the bright side.
Disingenuous. I mean, this guy just throws stuff out there. Okay.
Go ahead.
Malik Beasley, 28-point effort and a 1-point Pistons win in overtime over the Heat. Come on now, break the ice a little bit.
At least they're healthy. Isaiah Stewart just went out, so brutal. But they re-signed Paul Reed.
I tried giving you a bone, Hefe. Giving you a
re-signed Paul Reed. So yeah, it is what it is. I honestly, people are talking about the Bears. Are they shit in the bed right now? What's going on with the Bears?
They're down 13.
The Bears look horrible.
Caleb Williams, dude, is brutal, dude. They just did a montage of today, like behind the quarterback, like to show the field. He had like 4 or 5 plays where he just had someone wide open, staring right at him, and then just like either like starts running, gets like he looks bad.
The Bears are somehow worse without Matt Eberflus. Like the Lions, I know I've been saying I'm a little worried about it, but the Lions will handle the Bears. They'll be 1-0 next week. They'll bounce back.
Yeah, I mean, the Bears are a disaster. They have one guy running 4 different things. Like, you should blow the Bears out next week.
Hey, maybe they're marching down the field. They're only down two scores right now. Maybe there's a holding call. There's a flag. It's like as soon as anything good happens with.
I almost bet on Caleb Williams' yards. He had almost 400 against them last time they played, but I don't know what happened.
Yeah, but in the fourth quarter he'll light it up or something.
Yeah, that game went to overtime. So I kind of want the Vikings to lose.
I was offsides. I'm rooting for the Bears. I mean, obviously, we should all be rooting for the Bears here.
Yeah.
Hey. So I'm a Bears fan tonight.
I'm never a Bears fan, but I'll say
Bears supporter.
Yeah, support. Love that. Way better word.
Sam Darnold, 17 of 30, $150. What's going on with him? Come on. What are we doing?
Jetta's dropped an easy touchdown too.
Yeah. Need 200 yards out of that, man. All right. Anybody got any questions? I know I got. I do want to read this actually, selfishly. Hold on. I think I got called a bitch here. Jane Doe. Jeff is not Detroit's strong sounding like a big fan.
Great. Shout out, Jane.
Shout out Jane Doe, man. Southwest. Adam. Shout out Southwest again. Adam and Alexander Speed can help at linebacker. We have to switch it up with zone blitz packages during the game.
Yeah, Klotz, you know what? I have a bone to pick with you a little bit here. These linebackers, when they come in, I mean, dude, you're like, these are the best things since like sliced bread. And then it's like, we've been pretty quiet. They haven't really done much.
Yeah, my Jamal Adams thing's dead.
That's dude, you hyped us up. You're like, here we go. We're good. And then all of a sudden it's like, yeah, we haven't even talked about them making an impact.
Hey, we were talking about him making an impact last week. Ezekiel turning on Jordan Love, David Long. Like, they're making plays. Everything on that defense got exposed last week. And I think that was like, okay, these guys are playing good. They were able to carry momentum game to game. But now you talk about losing Ali McNeil. That's like when you're talking about a linebacker and defensive tackle, it's like a running back and a center or a guard. So their whole game's just thrown off. I mean, the guys were only going to play good for so long. I think the way that they've played already, they've played above their ceiling. Like, I remember watching Ben Neiman try to set an edge with Deion Dawkins and Josh Allen behind. Might have been Osiris Torrance, whoever it was, a Bills offensive lineman with Josh Allen behind him, and Ben Neiman just got blown to smithereens. Like, that's going to happen. What do you expect? They just, right now, like even like Trevor Nowaski, they fall into that tier of just like they're playing above their ceiling, but you can't expect them to consistently make plays.
Well, let's see. Michael says David Long was graded higher than Jack yesterday.
Boone.
PFF, only when it fits the narrative. That's my. I always say that.
We're not going to say Dave. How many snaps did they play? Go ahead and give me a snap.
No, that's a great. Yeah, that's the right answer. Yeah, because he's probably played a ton of snaps compared to David Long.
I mean, Jack Campbell played 70 snaps. I think he played in all 70 snaps.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Let's see, Dave.
I can pull it up right here. Hold on. I'm sorry, Jeff. Jack Campbell defense, Lions defense. Where are we at here? Jack Campbell 70 snaps.
Nope.
David Long 41% of the snaps. Jack Campbell played in 100% of the snaps. 41.
Nope. I don't agree with that.
To 100.
I don't agree.
It's a big difference. Imagine if he was out there for 100 snaps or 100% of the snaps. Different
Jack
story.
Campbell wouldn't get his spot back.
I think Bears just scored a touchdown. Maybe
I
not.
hope so.
I just saw there might have been a play or a penalty. Oh, no way. They had the ball at the 1 yard line. I think there's a holding call.
Of course there is.
I don't know, actually.
Of course. That's on
I don't know.
Aaron Jones, he only has 29 rushing yards. Oh, geez. I got 60 combined yards. So
he was cutting them up. Though.
I don't know what this call was. They have it at the 6 now.
Yeah, he's got 49 all purpose. Needs 60. A 11-yard run. Come on, Aaron Jones.
Dude, they might have a chance to win this game. There's still a lot of time left in the game. I almost might bet Bears money line.
Yeah, the way Sam Darnold's playing right now, it's not. I think the game's wide open.
I mean, dude, the fact that the Bears are about to make it 13-7 with 2 quarters to go. Oh, didn't report.
Yeah, no, the Vikings are winning that game. I'm sorry. I'm not.
Hey, Tyler says, do the Lions training staff need to be replaced? No.
A resounding yes. That's something that we need to talk about more. Like that. Yes. Yes. That is, I'm sorry. That's not just something that happens. Like if it's happening to the whole team, there's a recovery issue. There's a prep issue. I don't know what it is, but neither do they. They don't have the solution for it because
I don't know strength and conditioning too. Like that's part of it too. Like the
I don't know what
staff.
it is, but something in Allen Park needs to be changed as far as the training staff, like you said, Boone. And I don't know. I'm not a fucking doctor.
When I did the night show last year, I brought up like halfway through the year. I think there was a lot of injuries. I brought up halfway through the year. I said, hey, they need to look at changing their training staff because there were guys even last year that like you were losing dudes as well to just wild injuries. And it was like, hey, at what point I remember like the offensive line, like there was no one on that offensive line for the longest who could ever stay healthy. It felt like, and I was like, hey, like how can other teams stay healthy consistently like their offensive line, like the Chiefs constantly, the Eagles constantly, like their offensive lines were just staying healthy. And it's like, you're always just, and I was like, the training staff, like there's something going on there. You need to figure something out.
Yeah, someone was blaming the turf today too. I don't know.
Bears actually might not score a touchdown.
I don't know
think
what
they
that was
will.
about. Blaming the
Take
turf.
people.
I did see a
I don't
tweet
know,
about the
man.
turf.
I don't know. I mean, I the NFL needs to do research into like injuries on turf compared to grass and see.
They
like,
will
how-
never go back to grass though, because with turf you can print whatever the fuck you want on it, as far as
That's a good
advertising
point.
goes.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, all about the money.
All right. Hey, good show today, fellas. Appreciate everyone for tuning in. You can go check out videos recapping the injuries. We have our shorts from over the weekend live this morning. Go rewatch it. And of course, if you're listening, leave a 5-star review. Until tomorrow, we'll have John on Wednesday, but Tuesday be a great show. Start getting things in order for this week. Appreciate you all. Get your merchandise, officialcgsports.com. You can get this hat as well. It's on the website.
Check it
And,
out.
You can get Boone's.
Hey, the Booner Path Super Bowl.
There you go.
Come on now.
All right. Until tomorrow.
Go get your merch.